Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku was the water dragon hero part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story NezutheRatGod from WhatIf. So let's start the video. Tobirama watched as Madara slowly closed his eyes and died before his body broke apart and turned into a pile left from destroyed reincarnations. It appears to be our time, brother, said Tobirama while watching his body slowly break apart and could now see his soul. Yes, it appears so, Tobirama. I can't wait to see Mito again. Naruto, Sasuke, we entrust the safety and future of this world to you. Please end this needless cycle of hatred and being peace to the world, said Hashirama as he slowly started to break apart. We're putting a lot of faith into you, but me and my brother are sure you can do it, said Tobirama before his body fell apart and his soul rose into the sky. Naruto, become Hokage and bring peace to this world. Tobirama closed his eyes and was ready to see his family and finally rest while being with them as he watched the world continue on without him. Come on, Miss Midoriya, push, said a doctor. What is going on? Thought Tobirama in slight confusion. Oh, yelled Inko as she was trying desperately to give birth to her son. Come on, honey, you're almost there, said Hisashi holding his wife's hand. Ready and push, said the doctor as Inko gave one final scream and the sounds of a baby crying were heard. It's healthy, baby boy. Inko breathed for a little before she reached out and took her baby into her arms and looked him over. Inko, is it just me, or does our baby have white hair and red eyes? Said Hisashi. He was slightly worried that the baby might not be his. Well, it's possible that it's a latent gene or a BRH defect that made his hair white and eyes red, but don't worry, we'll run a BLD test to make sure, said the doctor. Tobirama opened his eyes and looked around the room. I seem to be a baby, and from the looks of this I've just been born. So does that mean that I was reincarnated sometime into the future, and if so, for what purpose? Thought Tobirama. What should we name him, Inko? Asked Hisashi looking down at his son and wife. Izuku, said Inko as she gently caressed his face with a loving smile on hers. So my name is Izuku. God damn it. Thought Tobirama, wishing he could change it but knew he couldn't. Much like I always said, I must accept and deal with it until the mission is over. But that doesn't mean I can't change it to my original name when I get older. Tobirama knew he sounded petty, but his original name held a lot of weight to it because it was the name his real mother gave him. Izuku, that's a perfect name, Inko, said Hisashi, who reached out and gently ran his hand over his son's white hair. 4-year time skip. Izuku, breakfast is ready, said Inko, calling down her son. Coming, mother, said Izuku. Izuku grew up into a young, healthy boy, but it concerned his parents for how smart he seemed to be and how fast he caught on to things, along with being extremely blunt. They took him to the doctors, and they said it might have to do with his quirk that's developing in his body. Izuku, are you excited to be getting your quirk soon? Said Inko as she put down his breakfast in front of him at the table. It will be quite interesting to see what my quirk will be, said Izuku. From what I've read and learned, it seems that no one uses chakra. But they use these quirks, which are quite fascinating, so it makes me wonder what mine will be. My mother has weak telekinesis and my father can breathe fire, so I should have either one or a combination of both. Thought Izuku as he ate his breakfast and started to think about starting his training to get his skills up again. Ever since he could start walking, he worked on getting his chakra unlocked, which luckily he was able to. He could also tell that his was even stronger now and seemed much more potent, like his brother's in a way. He hasn't begun training yet because his body is still too young for it, but next year he'll be able to start his training. Izuku did do some experiments and found that he can still do all his jutsus, but because of his smaller frame he has to be more careful since his coils are still young and developing. After a quick breakfast, Inko took Izuku to preschool for him to learn and play with his friends. Sadly, because of how smart Izuku was, he didn't have a lot of friends and was treated as a freak because he showed to be smarter than the teachers at times. Okay, honey, have fun at preschool today and I'll be back to pick you up when it's over, said Inko before she was stopped when Izuku handed her a note. Mother, could you please get me the materials on this paper? It'll help with writing and studying, said Izuku. Inko blinked and looked over the materials, as many blank scrolls as you can find. calligraphy brush and ink. Izuku honey, why do you need these? Isn't pen and paper good enough? Pen and paper is good, but I feel writing with those would be much better for what I want to do. Besides, our ancient ancestors used to use them, so in a way it'll be honoring them, said Izuku. He told the truth but not the whole truth. He wanted to get started recording his jutsus and working on his fuinjutsu again. Alright honey, I'll stop at the store and try and get you some 𝗧𝗧𝗏, said Inko. Thank you mother, said Izuku before he gave her a small bow and left to enter the building. Inko smiled and waved before she looked down sadly. My baby boy is growing up so fast, said Inko sadly. But he's still my baby no matter what, and I'll try my best to help him. Izuku walked through the preschool and headed to his class, where he sat down at his desk and pulled out a book and started writing in it. He started writing down his philosophy on life and the purpose of it, so when he passes on it can go to future generations and help them with life. As he was doing that, someone walked up to his desk with an aura of superiority around him and a scowl. What are you doing, Deku? Said Katsuki angrily. They used to friends, but they never really got along since Izuku always seemed way too mature. Writing in my book Bakugo, said Izuku. 𝗧𝗵𝗃, you think you're so special because you're smarter, don't you? Said Katsuki, with his superiority and inferiority complex conflicting another. I don't think I'm special, Bakugo, I just show a greater understanding of things, said Izuku before he decided to just ignore him. Well, guess what, Deku, I'm gonna be number one and there's nothing you can do to stop me, you quirkless freak, said Katsuki, but was met with silence. That angered him greatly, and it got him angry to the point he decided to attack Izuku. Thanks to Izuku's literal decades of combat in his previous life, he was able to see Katsuki's attack from a mile away. Katsuki's fist came flying to Izuku, and Izuku's hand shot up and grabbed his wrist while he flipped over Katsuki and put him in an arm lock. Before Katsuki could even react to this, he felt something sharp against his jugular and saw that it was Izuku's pen. Bakugo, I'm only going to warn you once, leave me alone, said Izuku in a very cold tone as he let go of him and sat at his desk and went back to his book. Katsuki honestly felt scared at that very moment, because when his eyes met Izuku's, they were cold and promised pain. The teacher walked in and saw that some of the students looked at Izuku with fear and some with respect. She brushed it off and decided to start the day's lesson. Alright everyone, today we're gonna continue learning basic additions, said the teacher with a happy tone. Izuku could only let out a deep breath as he closed his eyes and crossed his arms and waited. Izuku was in his room working on some fuinjutsu that Midoriya taught him. He was very glad he decided to learn the art. The possibilities with fuinjutsu are endless, but sadly not that many people other than Uzumaki learned it. He decided to change that, and with his current plans he's gonna teach at least intermediate levels to his soon-to-be subordinates. Izuku dear, what are you drawing? Asked Inko, who just walked into the room. She looked around his room and it kind of hurt her how Spartan it was. His room only had a bed and a desk, as well as a TV which was only used for background noise and to keep up with up-to-date news. It was some art I saw and decided to try and copy it, lied Izuku. The seal he was working on is a silent kill seal. You only had to place the seal on a person and within seconds or days, depending on what you wanted, would kill the person. Well, it's very appealing, Izuku, said Inko as she patted his head. Thank you mother, said Izuku with the ghost of a smile on his face. He can't even remember the last time his real mother hugged him. But Inko gave him that old feeling he still remembered with his real mom, and he never realized how much he missed it. So, Izuku, what do you want to be when you grow up? Maybe be a hero or a technician or maybe a scientist? Said Inko. Being a hero is overrated. All it is a glorified job where people in spandex just run around and beat up some guy and get paid millions to do it. Not only that, but heroes really don't do much else except make themselves rich and companies richer. The only heroes out there that really do anything are underground ones, because they deal with the real monsters of the world, said Izuku. I'm not sure what I will do in the future, but I want to do something that can truly help society. Even though we have amazing heroes as society says they really aren't. Look at All Might, he's the symbol of peace. But because of him, society is completely reliant on his pillar, and once that pillar crumbles, all of society will follow with it. The world has put too much weight on one thing, and that's heroes, and once we face a problem that they can't handle, we will all collapse. Inko's eyes were wide when she heard her son speak like this. It truly amazed her how wise and smart her son is. He's very blunt and never sugarcoats things. He always views things from a certain standpoint that once you hear you can't help but agree. Take for example, what if a powerful villain organization strikes at hero society and gave a decisive blow? A blow powerful enough that it caused the entire foundation to collapse under its own weight. If that was to happen, we'd be in total and complete chaos where the government would use heroes as soldiers to control us. People would panic and riots would break out in response, and as that happened the villains would use it to their advantage. What we need is something that when the foundation does collapse will hold society up and together until it's fixed. And I tend to be the person that creates this. I shall make something that will hold and protect us from this false hope we've made. People nowadays are simply just too optimistic, and as long as they feel safe they are completely fine with having the veil over their eyes, said Izuku. Inko stood there completely speechless and didn't even know how to respond to what he just said because of how true it sounded. Everything he said is true once you begin to think about it, and it's truly scary once you realize how fragile society is right now. Well, I'm sure if anyone can do it, you can, Izuku, said Inko as she hugged Izuku. Izuku had a small smile and hugged her back before he got serious and went back to his scroll. Well, I won't bother you until dinner is ready, and remember I'll always believe in you, Izuku, said Inko as she left. Izuku smiled again and pulled out a blank scroll where he took a deep breath and began writing in it. Anbu rules and codes. This scroll would contain all the rules the Anbu he was going to create would follow. He reached over and placed empty scroll nearby. Once he was done with this one, the next one would go over the training regime for Anbu, as well as tactics and everything they'd need to survive. I won't make the same mistakes I did in the last life, and I shall ensure that children never have to face the reality of war, said Izuku. And if I feel like it, maybe I'll start a family. I can already hear Hashirama and Mito nagging at me to have a family unlike my previous life. Izuku was sitting in his room meditating and feeling his chakra while trying to expand his sensing ability he used to do with ease. He expanded his senses as far as he can at the moment and was able to sense everyone within a mile's radius. Back in his old life, he was able to sense 20x that. Izuku, what are you doing? Said Hisashi, walking in and seeing his son sit in a weird position. I'm meditating, father, it helps clear the mind, said Izuku. Would you like to go and do something just father and son? Asked Hisashi, hoping to spend some time with him. Izuku took a deep breath and stood up. Very well, father. So what will we be doing? Well, I was thinking we can go out to eat, then maybe go see a movie if you'd like, said Hisashi. All right, just let me get changed, said Izuku as he went to his dresser to look for some better clothes. Hisashi smiled and walked out of the room and saw Inko giving him a thumbs up. See, I told you he'd spend some time with you, Hisashi, said Inko, patting his shoulder. I was just worried. I mean, I'm barely around and he's so mature now. I just want to do something that'll make me feel like a good dad, said Hisashi. He may not show it, but he does care very deeply about us, said Inko. How about you ask him if there's anything he wants and maybe you can buy it for him? Why, yeah, I could do that too, said Hisashi, feeling pride swell up in him. I'm ready to go, father, said Izuku, walking out wearing a black tank top and brown shorts with some black sandals on. Great. Let's go and have some fun, Izuku, said Hisashi, walking out the door with Izuku following. Izuku and Hisashi left the house and went to the car where they got in and left, heading out to get lunch first. So, Izuku, how has school been? Asked Hisashi. School is adequate, father. Most things I already know, so the teacher just lets me do as I wished, said Izuku. Well, that's good to hear, Izuku. So, what would you like to eat? Said Hisashi. I'd like some fish, but I'm fine with anything, father, said Izuku. Hisashi smiled and nodded and looked around for a restaurant, and after a couple more minutes he saw a sushi restaurant. Would this be all right, Izuku? Asked Hisashi, gesturing to the sushi restaurant. It will do, father, I'm fine with anything, said Izuku. Hisashi nodded and parked the car in the parking lot as both of them exited it, then went inside the restaurant and sat down and ordered food. Izuku. I'm sorry I'm not around as much as I should be, said Hisashi. It's all right, father. I understand that you have to make money to help me and mother, so I don't hold it against you, said Izuku. Well, I'm glad. But I'd still like to try and get closer, cause it feels to me that I'm not a very good father to you, said Hisashi. Izuku could only nod. He still remembers how sad his brother was whenever his Hokage duties took him away from his family. Well, in that case, let's just enjoy today so you can feel like a good father even though you are one, said Izuku. Hisashi nodded and was about to say something when their sushi was placed in front of them and they began eating. Izuku and Hisashi spent the rest of the day wandering around, then went and saw a movie that Izuku said was alright but flawed. Sadly, because of the obsession with heroes, 95% of movies nowadays are only about them and nothing else. The All Might movie was alright but had so many glaring issues, said Izuku with him and his dad walking out the mall. Like what, Izuku? Said Hisashi, curious on what his son would say about it. They make it seem that as long as the hero shows up you will be safe and nothing can harm you. Which is far from the truth. Even when the hero shows up the person could still die, said Izuku. Hisashi could only nod. He's seen and heard a couple stories when stuff like that has happened and saw the logic behind what he said. Not only that, but our government doesn't even give us the right to defend ourselves from villains, said Izuku, catching Hisashi's attention. For example, if a villain was to come and mug some random person and said person was to use his or her quirk, they would get in trouble by the law and be treated as a villain. All that does is make it easier for villains and make us overly reliant on heroes. How are we supposed to defend ourselves or our loved ones if we get attacked by villains? It's a very flawed law and gives villains too much freedom. The only options it gives us is to run away or hope for a hero to show up. Hisashi looked shocked at what his son just said. He looked up and saw shocked looks of other people around him, with some nodding in agreement. I agree, Izuku, but there's nothing we can do unless enough people say otherwise about the law. Izuku, said Hisashi before he turned and saw that Izuku was gone. He started to panic before he saw Izuku walking down the street towards a store that had a katana symbol and was called Authentic Weapons. Izuku walked into the store and saw lots of real katanas, wakizashis, tantos, shurikens, and kunais all along the walls. He continued to walk through, but something in the back caught his eye. It was being held in a viewing case and it was a headband. It was obviously very old and rusty because it covered most of it, but he could faintly make out the symbol of the hidden leaf. Hey kid, this doesn't seem like the type of store you should be interested in, said the shop owner walking up to him. I'm just looking around as alts, said Izuku walking up to the kunais and picking one up. These are off balance, too much weight at the tip and it's very dull. Snort, oh, and how would you know? Said the shop owner. Because this, said Izuku as he tried to balance it on his finger only for it to flop forwards and fall to the ground. See, it's too heavy at the front. Izuku, what are you doing here? Asked Hisashi walking into the store. Looking around, father. I think these weapons are interesting but the kunai are off balance and weight adults, said Izuku. Plague, they are just for show, nothing else. The real ones are back here, said the owner, grabbing some kunai from the back and showing them to Izuku. Izuku reached up and grabbed it and looked it up and down. This is more balanced but, said Izuku, who then threw it at a target, hitting a bullseye. Still not sharp enough. If they were truly sharp they would at least be up to the handle in the target. Hisashi and the shop owner looked in shock that Izuku was able to hit a bullseye without even looking. Figured. Do that again, said the shop owner. Izuku took a deep breath through his nose and did as was asked and threw another kunai that hit the same spot at the other. Hisashi looked and could almost tell that these weapons were meant for him, and he knew what he wanted to buy his son. Sir, how much for a couple sets of kunai and stuff? Asked Hisashi, reaching for his wallet. You know what, I'll give you guys a 30% discount, said the owner, who was beyond impressed. Great, and Izuku, is there something else here you would like? Asked Hisashi. Izuku walked over to the sword section and found a katana with white wrappings around the handle and grabbed it. He gave it a couple of test swings, making sure it was good before he put it on the counter. Okay, let's see. 4 sets of kunai and shuriken, which equal 20 each for each set. And the katana. Also adding the discount, your total is 341,125 yen. $3,000. Hisashi's eyes went wide when he heard that and was about to ask getting rid of some before he looked over at Izuku, who was looking at other stuff. So he sighed and handed him his debit card and paid for it all. Thank you for shopping with us, and I'll throw in a sharpening stone and a cleaning kit for free with it, said the owner. Hisashi nodded and grabbed the things before him, and Izuku left, heading for home. They arrived home and Izuku grabbed his new weapons and walked towards his room to begin drawing seals on his sword. He wanted to be able to pour his chakra into his sword so he has more versatility when fighting enemies. "So how did it go, honey?" asked Inko. "It went good, we had some fun and did some stuff. I also took your advice and bought him something he'd like," said Hisashi, hoping she wouldn't kill him when she found out. "Oh, and what did you buy him?" asked Inko, happily wondering what he got Izuku as a gift. "Well, might have bought him some weapons," said Hisashi. "What?" screamed Inko, making Hisashi start running away with her chasing him holding a frying pan. Izuku heard his mother scream at his father and start chasing him, to most likely kill him for buying these weapons for a 4-year-old. Maybe I could bring my sealing levels to Midoriya's level or Minato's level and be able to create any seal I want by only molding my chakra," said Izuku as took a deep breath and placed his hand on a piece of paper and tried to create a seal by molding his chakra. He sat there for 10 minutes trying this, while ignoring his father's screams for mercy. A bead of sweat rolled down his temple before he lifted his hand and saw the seal on the piece of paper. He let a rare smirk cross his face as he saw this, "one step closer to my goal to trying to fix this world like me and my brother tried." Izuku was now 5 years old and was walking through the woods in the winter trying to enjoy the peace and quiet. He unlocked his quirk last year and was surprised by what it ended up being, Ocean Release. It allowed him to completely control of any and all water around him, including liquids inside living things. But he doesn't use it much because it ended up being extremely chakra taxing for now, but once he's older he should be able to use it freely. When everyone in school found out how powerful his quirk is, everyone tried to befriend him simply because of his quirk. Some of the kids he might respond to, but most he simply ignored. One kid, however, made it his personal goal to try and bully him. Katsuki Bakugo. His ego was badly bruised when Izuku revealed his powerful quirk and made it his personal job to bully him. Most of the attempts he made ended with him in the nurse's office with bruises and an even more damaged ego. As Izuku continued to walk, he sensed someone a ways ahead of him. From what he could tell, it was a kid a couple years older than him. Izuku quickly ran up the hill using some chakra to jump across the trees to cover more ground and soon arrived at the place. It was a kid a couple years older and had snow-white hair and what looked to be some burn scars on his body. He was laying on the ground unconscious. Izuku could sense a little bit of chakra in him, and luckily he was still young enough, if he wanted could unlock it. He looked up and saw that the snow was increasing fast and decided to make a small camp for him and the older boy. So he walked over to him and used some chakra to increase his strength, picked him up and carried him to a good spot to camp for now. Toya slowly opened his eyes and saw that he was under a tree and laying on some pine branches to keep him off the ground. In front of him was a fire and a kid around the age of Shoto sitting in front of it stoking the flames with a stick. "I see you're awake," said Izuku looking at Toya. He reached into his pocket and tossed him a ration bar he made. "It won't taste good, but it'll give you some of your strength back." Toya looked at the bar and slowly unwrapped it and took a bite before he began gagging. "Bleg, this tastes horrible." "I didn't say it'd taste good. All I said was it'll give you some of your strength back," said Izuku, going back to the fire. Toya grumbled and forced the food down. Even though it tasted horrible, he did feel better. He sat there staring at the kid for a while before he spoke. "Who are you?" "Izuku Midoriya, and who are you? Also, why are you out in the woods? It's dangerous for you," said Izuku. If I could say the same for you. I mean, you're younger than me," said Toya, "and I was waiting for my dad." "Yes, but I know how to survive out here and he's not coming," said Izuku. "Shut up, how do you know?" yelled Toya, glaring at the kid. "Because I can sense everything in 5-mile radius around us right now and no one is near us except the park ranger at his post," said Izuku. Toya gritted his teeth and fell to the ground, letting out choked sobs. He looked and saw that his burn scars were covered in bandages. "But, Sniff, why doesn't he praise me like the others?" sobbed Toya. "Ambition and greed," said Izuku. "From what I saw on your ID, your dad is Endeavor and he most likely saw no use for you. He wants to surpass All Might and he wouldn't hesitate to destroy his family to do so," said Izuku. "I just wanted to make him proud of me like he used to be," said Toya. "As sad as it is, your father doesn't care about you anymore," said Izuku coldly. "Shut up," said Toya. Izuku looked over and saw all the pent-up anger, pain, sadness, betrayal and loneliness in his eyes, and he decided to help. "Why does the truth hurt?" said Izuku, standing up and looking at him. "Does it hurt knowing you're just yesterday's trash?" "Shut the hell up, what would you know about pain and suffering?" screamed Toya. "I bet not once have you ever had to suffer." After he screamed that, Izuku got flashbacks to his siblings, his family, his clan, friends, students, brother who all died, and his once short-time lover who he lost to some IWA ninjas. "I'm simply stating the facts. You're nothing more than a failed experiments," said Izuku. Toya finally snapped and charged at Izuku, screaming and throwing punches at him. Izuku simply blocked or dodged all of Toya's punches for a while, making Toya even angrier. "Ah!" screamed Toya as he sent a massive wave of blue flames at Izuku. Izuku went through a couple of quick hand signs and created a wall of water to block the attack. "Water style. Water WP jutsu," said Izuku as the wall of water changed into a WHP and smacked Toya away. Toya slowly stood up and ignored the pain and sent another blast of flames at Izuku while ignoring the pain in his arm from his fire. Izuku dodged the attack and moved in closer and kneed him in the gut, making Toya fall down. "Feel better," said Izuku, looking down at the breathing form of Toya. "Why?" said Toya with tears streaming down his face. Izuku knew what he was asking, so he answered, "Some people are so blinded by greed or lust for power they will do anything for it, even if it means destroying everything they once loved and cared for." He kneeled down in front of Toya and let him cry, but was slightly caught off guard when he suddenly hugged him and started crying into his shoulder. Izuku was used to this because of his brother, but he knew he wasn't the best for these types of situations. So he simply let Toya cry and gently patted his back. After a while, Toya finally stopped crying and let go of Izuku and wiped his tears away. "Sorry," said Toya. "It's fine," said Izuku as he stood. "W8, how are you so strong?" asked Toya. "I trained," said Izuku, walking back to the fire. "But you're younger than me, you shouldn't be this talented," said Toya. "I'm special, as you could say, but anyways, why do you want to impress your father so bad?" said Izuku. "So he can be proud of me and so I can be a great hero," said Toya. "Being a hero is overrated, you'd be better off being a cop," said Izuku. "What do you mean?" asked Toya, beyond confused. "Heroes don't help, lots of the problems they solve they also create. Look at All Might. What will happen if he suddenly dies or has to retire because of an injury?" "I'll tell you. Complete anarchy," said Izuku. "So what would you do then?" asked Toya. "I'll create an organization that is loyal to no government and has no ties to them, and that we work in the shadows. Our simple goal would to be stop villains and maintain peace from the shadows. That way less people would be hurt," said Izuku. Toya looked at him with awe and shock, and deep down he didn't know why, but he felt an urge to follow him. "So how will you do that?" "You'll need a lot of strength and people and money to that," said Toya. "I have strength, but in time I shall have the other two," said Izuku. "Prove it," said Toya. Izuku took a deep breath and stood up and walked to the clearing before he went through more hand seals. "Water style. Water dragon jutsu," said Izuku as he created a massive water dragon out of the snow and moisture in the air. He sent the water dragon towards some trees and destroyed 30 before it lost momentum. "Earth style. Lightweight rock jutsu," said Izuku as he grabbed a massive boulder in front of him and picked it up with ease and threw it away. "Fire style. Dragon flame jutsu," said Izuku as he sent out a massive fireball the size of a SUV from his mouth. "Wind style. Air bullet jutsu," said Izuku as he sent out a condensed ball of air that tore through multiple trees. "Lightning style. Raikiri," said Izuku as he concentrated a massive amount of lightning chakra into his hand, then plunged it into the tree in front of him. He only saw it once but was able to figure out Kakashi did it, and with trial and error was able to recreate the jutsu. Toya looked at Izuku in complete awe of the power he just showed him and just couldn't believe his eyes. "Like I said, I have strength, and it will only continue to grow after time," said Izuku. "Train me," said Toya, looking at Izuku. Izuku looked at him for a while with neither of them speaking before he turned around and started to walk away. Toya saw this and held his head down in disappointment. "Are you coming or not?" said Izuku as he continued to walk but made sure it was loud enough for Toya to hear. He quickly smiled and ran after Izuku in hopes of being trained. Mother, I am home and I brought a friend, said Izuku, entering the house with Toya right behind him. Okay, and oh why hello, my name is Inko Midoriya, what's your name? Said Inko, walking towards Toya and smiling. 𝗧𝗵𝗲. My name is 𝗧𝗵𝗲, said the now named 𝗧𝗵𝗲. 13 years later, Izuku was standing on an elevated platform watching over his recruits, but mainly watching 𝗧𝗵𝗲 since he is planning to make him part of his team. They were in a secret bunker he built out in the woods where he built or bought everything he'd need to run a secret organization. A training area, barracks, food court, storage room, medical room, information room, library, and prison/interrogation area. Again, said Izuku, watching 𝗧𝗵𝗲 struggle to do the jutsu. Fire-style fireball jutsu, said 𝗧𝗵𝗲 as he sent a massive fireball from his mouth, with it being the same color as his normal flames. Next, said Izuku. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 then quickly grabbed some kunai and threw them, getting 9 out of 10 bullseyes. He then ran towards a shadow clone of Izuku and engaged it in taijutsu, which wasn't his strong suit. Izuku-sensei, said a figure kneeling next to him wearing some standard training clothes. What is it? Said Izuku, looking at one of his soon-to-be Anbu. We've been gathering information like you've ordered us to, and we found some more recruits, said the figure. He had long blonde hair and black eyes with red 𝗧𝗪𝗓. His quirk allows him to track people by seeing the path they've walked. Good, and thank you. Also assemble everyone, I have an announcement to make to them, said Izuku. He then body flickered away. After a couple minutes, over 80 people were standing at attention in front of Izuku and waiting for what he has to say. They were all saved and practically raised by him because society viewed them as outcasts. But he didn't. He taught them things they thought impossible, and even though he was harsh, he cared deeply for each one. Because of this, they would gladly follow him to hell if he asked them to. Good. Now that you're all here, I have something to tell you all, and if you don't want to be a part of it, you may leave. But you shall be mind wiped if you do, said Izuku. Over the years I have rescued you or brought you in for a better life where you shall all be treated equally. I trained you, I fed you, and I gave each of you a purpose. And now I shall tell you why I did this. This world is corrupt, and the government would rather its people suffer than defend themselves. They would rather us rely on them. And because of this, our people can't protect ourselves. We are forced to rely on heroes and police, or we will be treated like villains. Our society is corrupt, and heroes don't care for saving people. All they care for is money and fame. The ones in charge, the Hero Association, only care about control and power and are willing to do anything to maintain it. I have built this organization, and we shall be the shadows in this world where we shall strike from the night to protect those weaker. We shall be the ones that shall cloak ourselves in darkness and not fall into it. We shall be the ones that look at evil and say, bring it. So I ask all of you, if you are willing to join me and protect this world to make sure kids never have to starve or fear losing their family. Then join me and we shall protect them from the true evil of this world, said Izuku. All of the people in the room looked at him, with none of them moving before 𝗧𝗵𝗲 took one step forward and kneeled. I shall follow you to the end search, said 𝗧𝗵𝗲. The others soon followed and all kneeled down. We shall follow you to the end, sir. Very well. From this day forth we shall be known as Anbu, and you are all Anbu agents. Now step forward and take your gear, said Izuku. As he pushed a button and the over 80 suitcases came out of the wall. They all stepped forward and took a case before they quickly changed into their Anbu gear and adorned the Anbu mask. You are now part of the shadows. You keep the darkness from the light and protect and serve. And from this day forth you shall call me Hokage-sama or Tobirama-sama, said Izuku using his true name. Hi Hokage-sama, said all the new Anbu agents. The last thing I have to give you all is the Anbu tattoo, which shows that you are part of the organization. But also will allow me to give you orders from far away or call for an emergency, said Izuku. All the agents got in a line and waited as Izuku grabbed multiple bottles of ink. You will all need to put 1 drop of your BLD into the ink. For this tattoo shall never disappear and forever be with you. After a long 30 minutes of placing the seal on each one of them, with it now being a tattoo, they all went back and stood at attention. All of you have the night off. Do what you want, but don't get crazy, for tomorrow we begin our works, said Izuku before he turned around and left. Hi Hokage-sama, said all the Anbu in the room before they all went off to do their own thing or talk to friends or now family. Izuku soon arrived in his office and sat down in his seat and leaned back and thought about the 10 years that have passed. After Izuku and 𝗬𝗍 met, they began their friendship/training, with Izuku training him to be a ninja. They would visit every single day. 𝗬𝗍 would be beaten to the ground but always got up afterward to make Izuku proud. Time continued to pass, and over time Izuku found other people either slightly older than him or around his age. Over time he secretly built a base to call his headquarters and soon brought them there to live if they wanted to. Izuku was knocked out of his thoughts when 𝗬𝗍 entered the room and had his tiger mask hooked to his hip. "Tobirama-sama, I have a question," said 𝗬𝗍 using the title Izuku told them to use. "What is it?" said Tobirama. "Who will be our main target that we go after? I know you mentioned that we shall fight villains and some heroes, but who else?" said 𝗬𝗍. "We shall take down crime syndicates and heroes that don't even deserve that title. We shall also go after the Hero Association since they are responsible for most of this," said Tobirama. "I understand and thank you," said 𝗬𝗍 before he left the room to most likely get some sleep. Izuku arrived back at home and saw his mom and dad sitting on the couch watching TV. "Oh Izuku, I'm glad you're back. How's 𝗬𝗍?" said Inko. "He's doing good, mother, but forgive me, but I'd like to get some sleep," said Izuku as he walked to his bedroom. He got in and changed into his pajamas and was about to get in bed when his door was opened. "Hey Izuku," said Hisashi as he walked in. "Yes, father," said Izuku. "You're 18 years old and graduated high school with top marks. What college are you planning to go?" asked Hisashi. "None, I already have a good paying job set up," said Izuku. His parents were unaware, but when he was younger he created a stock account and started to invest in stock and crypto and now had a lot of money. He had more than enough to live off of and to supply his Anbu with all the gear they will need. "Oh, I would have recommended you if you did. I mean, with your quirk and mindset I'm sure you would have been accepted immediately," said Hisashi. "True, but with my schedule I'd be too busy to go to college, but I'm more than content with this," said Izuku. "Okay, well I'd still suggest maybe doing an online course if they offer it," said Hisashi, which made Izuku nod. "They do offer it, but I'd have to explain why I want to do the online one instead," said Izuku. "Well then why not do that then? It'd give you a major and it'd look good on your resume for any other job you might have," said Hisashi. "I'll think about it, father, and forgive me but I am quite tired and would like to get some sleep," said Izuku. "Oh, all right, sorry. Well, good night Izuku," said Hisashi as he left. It was the next night and all the Anbu were standing at attention waiting for their leader to show up. It wasn't long until they saw him. He now had 3 red markings on his face, 1 under each of his eyes and 1 on his chin. He wore blue armor with a distinctive white fur collar over a simple black suit. "All Anbu get into your teams," said Tobirama as he watched them all quickly get into their assigned teams. "Good, now tonight is the night we go out there and begin our work. You have all been given an assignment. I expect you all to accomplish it and all of you to come back home afterwards. Remember, we live in the shadow, so only reveal yourselves if it's to kill your opponent and make sure to leave no trails back here," said Tobirama. "Hi Hokage-sama," yelled all the Anbu in unison. "Good, now move out," said Tobirama, watching them all body flicker away to do their assigned task. "So what about me Hokage-ma?" said 𝗬𝗍, who was wearing his Anbu gear and mask. "Tiger, you are coming with me," said Tobirama, which he received a nod back. "Good then, let's go." It was a silent night in Japan with the occasional hero running around, but they were very, very few in number because there was less news crew and people. But in the shadows, squads of masked figures were jumping from rooftop to rooftop, spreading out through the city. As the figures disappeared, they went to select locations and killed or stole information that would be needed at a later date. But in another part of the city were 2 figures, with one being clad in Anbu gear and the other wearing blue armor with a white fur collar. "This is our target, 𝗧𝗍𝗧𝗏, said Tobirama, looking down at a fancy apartment building where the hero 𝗧𝗵𝗃 lived. "From the report I read, he's wanted for drag smuggling and RP, correct?" said 𝗧𝗧𝗏. "Indeed, but before we kill him, let's interrogate him to find any other information he may have," said Tobirama. "Hi Hokage-sama," said 𝗧𝗧𝗏 before they both body flickered away. Inside 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃's apartment, he was chuckling to himself as he looked over at the girl on his bed that was shaking and crying. "Oh, quit crying, you should feel lucky to have had 𝗧𝗍𝗪 with someone like me," said 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃. He grabbed his bottle of whiskey and was about to take a sip when he was slammed into the ground and felt his shoulder get dislocated. He screamed before his mouth was covered. 𝗵𝗃, you're gonna tell us everything I want to know or else, said Tobirama looking at him with a cold glare. Did you know who I am? Said 𝗵𝗃, who tried to use his quirk but couldn't feel it. I sealed your quirk away so you're defenseless, said Tobirama. I guess I'll have to get it out of you the hard way. Wait, he said before he felt one of his fingers get snapped. 2-inch, said Tobirama as he grabbed his other fingers and kept breaking them one after another. After a couple more seconds, all but 3 of his fingers were broken. Now I begin the real torture and interrogation, said Tobirama as he pulled out a seal and placed it on 𝗵𝗃. The next thing he felt was brutal white-hot pain. It was so intense that he couldn't even scream. All he could do was thrash around in his seat in pain, which only seemed to get worse. This seal right here imitates the same type of pain as lava being poured into your body. It also won't let you go unconscious. I'm going to keep it on you until I know that you'll tell me everything I want to know, said Tobirama. As he was interrogating him, Tiger was helping the woman who looked to be 16 and patching her wounds. Don't worry, you're safe, said Tiger as he placed some special healing ointment on her. Thank you. I was just so scared, said the girl as she kept sobbing because of her horrifying experience. Tiger just nodded, not knowing what to say, and continued to heal her wounds. So will you talk? Said Tobirama, deactivating the seal after 5 painful minutes for 𝗵𝗃. Why yes please, just no more, said 𝗵𝗃. Then start talking or I'm activating it, said Tobirama. In a warehouse in the docking district. Warehouse, that's where I sell all my drags, said 𝗵𝗃. And the place is run by a small group of thugs, and in my office I have some files on all my partners, said 𝗵𝗃. Good, now we have no use for you, said Tobirama, activating a different part of the seal which killed him instantly. Tiger, call the police, said Tobirama, heading for the office. The next morning, on today's news, a massive drop in crime happened last night and over 60% of gangs have mysteriously disappeared or been killed. The police and heroes are looking into this and to find out who did this to these people. But in other news, 13 pro heroes were found dead in their homes and all had USB sticks on them, apparently showing crimes they committed. The Hero Association and police have yet to reveal any information on the crime they are accused of, said the reporter. Thank you, Mo. But in other news, apparently with this new organization, the police and heroes are telling everyone to be careful at night, for they are unsure what this supposed group of people will do. Some people say it was ghosts, but no one is quite sure because from what the police reported, there is next to no evidence or trail left behind from whoever killed all these criminals, said another news reporter. Whoever these people are, I should join them to cleanse this world of fake heroes, said a man with a sickening grin, forming. This world shall be cleaned of its stains. Whoever these people are, they are jeopardizing our control of the people. What should we do? Asked a man in a suit. Send Lady Nagant. She's used to killing people, so she'll be perfect for this. We can't lose our control or people might know what we are doing, said the president of the Hero Association. Quite interesting. Quite interesting indeed. Whoever these people are, they are highly skilled and are changing things extremely fast, said All for One. So what shall we do, asked Shigaraki. For now, nothing, not until we have more information on who they are, said All for One. Tobirama was in his office reading a report one of his Anbu teams left for him after their mission. You did well and you left no trace of you being there, correct? Asked Tobirama, looking at the 4 kneeling Anbu. Hi Hokahama, we made sure to destroy and take any evidence we were ever there, said the bird-masked Anbu. Good job, I'll have some money transferred to your accounts once I finish reading the rest of my reports. Your team is dismissed, said Tobirama. It's been 2 weeks since him and his Anbu have started to attack villain organizations and corrupt heroes, and in that time things changed fast. The news has been scouring all over Japan to try and figure out who this organization is, but no matter where they looked, they could find nothing. The heroes and police have been working night and day doing the same and never find a single trail. Some have started calling them ghosts or shadows, but no matter what they did, they could find nothing on them. 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗲, said a dragon-masked Anbu kneeling before him, who was his second in command since 𝗧𝗵𝗿 declined the position. "What is it, dragon?" asked Tobirama, looking over at him. "We have found a massive human trafficking ring that was rumored to be running around in the ports of Tokyo," said Dragon. "I see. Get 3 squads ready and tell Tiger too as well. I shall be going on the raid to take them out," said Tobirama. "Hi 𝗃𝗃𝗵𝗲, said Dragon, bowing before he disappeared in a body flicker. Tobirama was standing on top of a crane overlooking the docking area he was told the human traffickers were. Behind him was 3 of his best 4-man squads as well as Tiger. "What are you orders, Hokage-sama?" said Tiger, standing next to him. "Squad Squid and Badger, I want both of you to secure the area and make sure none escape and no one enters the area," said Tobirama. "Hi," said both squads as they all disappeared in a body flicker. "Nico, I want your team to go with Tiger and help save everyone and kill anyone in your path," said Tobirama. "What about you, Hokage-sama? We know you're strong, but you should be guarded at all times," said a bear-masked Anbu on Nico's team. "Don't worry about me, I'll be fine. Besides, it's been a long time since I've been in a fight and I can't afford to get rusty," said Tobirama. "I'll cause havoc and draw all their attention on me while you do that." Hi, they quickly disappeared as well, leaving Tobirama by himself on the crane. Tobirama observed the area and saw a couple of lookout and pulled out his kunai and in a show of extreme marksmanship started killing them. After a full minute of throwing chakra-enhanced kunai, the lookouts and snipers were dead. He then jumped down and created a blue ball of spiraling chakra in his hand, much like he saw Naruto and Minato create. Tobirama landed on a thug on the ground and slammed his Rasengan into his back, sending him into the ground and tearing through his back, while creating a massive explosion and crater in the ground. He quickly charged forward and threw a bunch of paper bombs, killing more villains and causing lots of noise and havoc. "Who is that?" "I don't know." She was cut off when Tobirama body flickered in front of him and slit his throat with a kunai. He quickly turned around and went through some hand signs. "Water style. Water dragon jutsu," said Tobirama as a massive water dragon was created from thin air and tore through a massive group of thugs, before it turned and destroyed a building where he didn't sense anyone in it. "Take this," yelled a villain whose quirk activated and his arms turned purple and tried to reach out and grab him. Tobirama quickly replaced himself with another villain and threw a kunai at him, cutting his 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗟 spine from his skull. The villain fell to the ground dead with his arms touching the other villain and made him start puking out blood before he died as well. "Water style. Water cannon jutsu," said Tobirama as he shot a massive stream of powerful hot water that cut through everything in its path. He turned his head and cut a couple cranes nearby and caused them to crash onto the ground, killing even more villains. "What the hell is 𝗃𝗧𝗋?" yelled one of the few remaining villains as he backed away in fear. "I don't know," said another before she started to run away to try and escape. Tobirama looked over at the running away villains and ran after them at Kage level speeds and quickly cut them all down. "Hokage-sama, all the victims are rescued," said Lion before him, and the other squads looked in shock at the destruction he caused. "Good, call the police and we'll leave before they get here," said Tobirama before he quickly jumped off and started to run up the building. The police and heroes soon arrived, and one of the heroes that did arrive was a sleep-deprived man with long black hair. "Holy SHT! Who could have caused so much destruction?" said one of the cops in complete shock. Izawa walked over to the destruction and saw lots of corpses of villains and thugs laying on the ground. Some looked like they were killed by a knife, while others looked like they were cut in half or completely obliterated. "Whoever did this is no joke and is insanely powerful," thought Izawa before he looked up and the destroyed buildings. Some of these looked to be cut perfectly like a hot knife through butter. "Got any ideas, Eraserhead?" asked Tsukachi, walking up to him. "I believe that it was our mystery group of vigilantes," said Izawa. Izawa looked over and saw some of the victims and went over to them. "Forgive me, but do you know who saved you?" said Izawa, looking at some of the people. "And no, but they were wearing what looked like white animal masks," said one of the girls who was being looked at by a medic. "I did see one person that stood out," said someone else. "Can you give us any description?" asked Izawa with Tsukachi behind him. He wore what looked like blue battle armor and had a white fur collar. The people in the animal masks seemed to view him as the leader and they all disappeared in the blink of an eye after they called the cops, said the lady. I see, thank you, said Izuku before he walked off to call Nezu. Principal Nezu, I have some information. Oh, and what information would that be, Izuku? Chirped Nezu. This new vigilante group seems to wear white animal masks and follows a man wearing blue battle armor, said Izuku. That's not much to go off of, said Nezu. I know, but it's at least something, and what will we do about these vigilantes? They have been out for only a couple weeks. And they have already began to win people over because crime is even lower now, said Izuku. I'm not quite sure, but I'd very much like to meet the leader of this group because whoever he is, he's very resourceful and crafty, said Nezu. I'll keep looking and hopefully I'll find something, said Izuku before he hung up. Tobirama and his Anbu were jumping from rooftop to rooftop heading home. As they were doing this, they would occasionally stop to stop the random crime they would pass. As they continued to go, Tobirama sensed something coming at him fast and quickly summoned his sword from his storage seal. He turned and quickly cut a bullet in half, with one half hitting the ground and the other flying off into the air. Hokage-sama! Yelled the Anbu as they all got in battle positions to protect their leader. All of you leave, I'll take care of this, said Tobirama. But Hokage-, the Anbu was cut off when Tobirama threw a kunai and deflated a bullet that almost took her head off. None of you are high enough of a skill level to deal with this, so I'll take care of it. Now leave, that's a order, said Tobirama. The Anbu wanted to protest but reluctantly agreed and ran off heading for home. Tobirama cut another bullet in half that came from a completely different direction and used his sensing ability and found the sniper. The sniper was over a mile away, which impressed him greatly. He quickly started to head in the direction of the sniper while dodging or deflecting bullets that were coming for him. Soon he got close enough and body flickered away right before a bullet took his head away. Lady Nagant looked in shock that her target just suddenly disappeared, and also for the whole time she was shooting at him he dodged or deflected every bullet. I was wondering when the Hero Association would send their attack dogs after me, said a voice behind her. She quickly turned around and pointed her barrel at the man she had been trying to kill for the past 2 minutes. She looked him up and down and saw that he looked ready for battle, and she couldn't help but note that he was pretty attractive. So the Hero Association sent the famous Lady Nagant to kill me. Then again, if they want no trace, they do send you, said Tobirama. How do you know that? Said Lady Nagant, sweating slightly. Simple, I not only hacked into your servers but I also broke into your building and copied your files, said Tobirama. Lady Nagant looked at him in complete shock that he was able to do that and talked like it wasn't even a challenge. He's dangerous. I can't let my guard down for a second. Both of them stared at each other with neither moving a muscle, but Nagant was sweating slightly cause she can tell from one look. The man in front of her is powerful and could already feel like she lost. Tobirama looked at his opponent and saw that she was a tall, curvy woman with dark blue and pink two-tone hair and angled eyebrows. Wearing light boots, a dark, sleeveless dress and a metallic utility belt in which she stores bullets in. They both stared at each other for a long time before she quickly pulled the trigger and tried to kill him. Tobirama quickly dodged and threw a kunai at her, which she also dodged and loaded another bullet and fired at him. As they continued to fight, Tobirama noticed pain coming from her and doubt from what she was doing. Tell me, why do you kill? Said Tobirama, landing on top of a water tower that was on the roof of a building. To protect people and save them, said Nagant as she fired her gun at Tobirama, who effortlessly cut the bullet in half with his kunai. Yet I sense doubt from you, said Tobirama. I'm doing what the commission orders me to and it protects people, said Nagant as she rolled away from a barrage of kunai. You know that's a lie. They are simply manipulating you to do what they want so they stay in control, and deep down you know that, said Tobirama. He quickly charged her and kicked her gun up before he delivered a quick punch to her stomach. Nagant recoiled from it and countered with a kick to the side of his knee. It soon turned into a duel that she was losing fast and had to do something drastic. She quickly jumped back and shot her gun off in a random direction and quickly changed the bullet's direction and had it come behind him. Tobirama sensed it immediately and went through some hand signs and created a wall of water behind him which stopped the bullet. He went through more and created a massive water dragon and had it slam into her. Nagant got thrown off the building and grabbed onto the edge of it and was barely holding on. I must admit you are very good, said Tobirama, walking up to her. Thanks, but don't think I'm done, said 𝗫𝗫 as she used her gunshot as force to push her back up and swung her gun at Tobirama. He quickly blocked it and had his legs kicked out from under him, which he quickly countered with by shoving his free arm down and bouncing off with it. 𝗫𝗫 charged at him and threw a high kick trying to hit his head, which he easily blocked and grabbed her leg, making her curse. Tobirama spun and threw her to the ground before he quickly pinned her and held a kunai to her throat. Enough, you've lost, said Tobirama. 𝗫𝗫 struggled for a couple more seconds before she finally relented, realizing she did indeed lose. Good, now I'm going to ask you some questions and you're going to answer them, said Tobirama. 𝗬𝗍𝗓, sir, do we have any leads on this new vigilante organization? Asked Burnett. No. But we will soon, said 𝗬𝗍𝗓 before his phone started to ring. What is it? After a couple seconds, 𝗬𝗍𝗓 grew a grin and hung up and put his phone in his pocket. I got a location, let's go, said 𝗬𝗍𝗓 before he ran off, heading to Tokyo docks. That's all I know, said 𝗫𝗫, who told him about all the things she was forced to do for the commission. During the talk, Tobirama let her go and she was now sitting on the ground holding her legs. So they took advantage of an innocent girl to do the dirty work to stay in control, said Tobirama. She nodded her head. I thought I was doing the right thing, but then I started to read up on what little information about your group there was. You do the same thing, but you guys actually go after evil people and not just ones who will disturb their control, said 𝗫𝗫. That's 'cause I want to make this world better, a world where children will never have to face war or brutality. A world where the strong protect the weak and not use them as pawns like this world does, said Tobirama. But how do you live with the killing? Every time I look at my hands now, all I see is blood on them, said 𝗫𝗫. I was born into this war, bloodshed. They are all normal to me, I just know how to deal with it, said Tobirama. What? But how you look just a couple years younger than me, and I'm only 23. Said 𝗫𝗫, letting some anger run through her system. Yes, but that doesn't mean I haven't seen it. I've buried my brothers, my parents, and countless others, and I keep moving forward. If I was to stop and mourn them, then I wouldn't be able to get up again, so I have to keep moving forward to make sure no one else has to live with that, said Tobirama. 𝗫𝗫 looked at him in shock and not knowing what to say. I'll be honest, the Hero Commission lied and manipulated you to do their bidding, and they would throw you away like yesterday's trash. So tell me, what will you do? I can easily show you how evil they are, said Tobirama. She lowered her head down and quietly spoke, I know what they do. But I thought it was for good. But in reality it isn't. I'm just being used as a tool. And I intend to stop them and use my forces to save Japan, then the world, said Tobirama. 𝗫𝗫 kept looking at the ground with everything swirling around in her head and not sure what to do. Tobirama crossed his arms and started to walk away when he was stopped. Let me join you, yelled 𝗫𝗫 as she stood up. Tobirama looked at her with a raised eyebrow. And why should I let you? For all I know, you could be acting as a spy. I'll prove it, said 𝗫𝗫. He narrowed his eyes and threw a kunai at her, and when he was next to her neck, he teleported next to her with the blade on her throat. I could kill you right now and no one would be able to stop me, said Tobirama, trying to intimidate her. Then do it, said 𝗫𝗫 as she forced the fear down. Tobirama was silent for a moment and put the blade on her throat, cutting it slightly. 𝗫𝗫 held her breath, thinking this would be her end, but before she could say her prayers, she felt the cold, steep leave. Very well, but we will interrogate you to be safe, I hope you know that, said Tobirama. 𝗫𝗫 nodded. She couldn't help but feel happier for the first time since she joined the Hero Association. He walked right up to her and placed his hand on her shoulder, and body flickered away. Tobirama and 𝗫𝗫 arrived at Anbu headquarters, and all the nearby Anbu got on guard when they saw her. Nico, take her to the holding cells and make sure you disarm her and look for any tracking devices I might have missed, said Tobirama. Hi Hokatama, follow me, said Nico as she put a blindfold on 𝗫𝗫 and took her hand to take her to the prisoner block. After a short walk, they arrived at the prisoner cells, and Nico took off 𝗫𝗫's blindfold and put her in her new cell. Shark, watch her while I go and give my report to Hokage-sama, said Nico. Aight, said Shark as went back to his post to keep an eye on her and the few other people in different cells. She looked around and saw that the cell was like any regular cell, except it had a shower that offered a little privacy, thankfully. She looked over at the bars and noticed a piece of paper on the lock and raised an eyebrow. Really paper to stop prisoners to escape. But then again, the others would have escaped as well, thought 𝗵𝗃. 𝗵𝗃 sat down on her bed and couldn't help but smile slightly at technically being free from the hero association. She was knocked out of her thoughts when Tobirama arrived and had an owl-masked Anbu next to him. We shall begin the mind-sweeping. Owl will go through your memories and see if you're telling the truth or being used as a double agent, said Tobirama. 𝗵𝗃 nodded her head in understanding and watched as the owl-masked Anbu walked up to her. Fair warning, this will feel weird, said Owl as she placed her hand on 𝗵𝗃's forehead and looked through her memories. After 15 minutes, Owl removed her hand and looked at Tobirama. She was telling the truth, sir. When I went through her memories, I didn't feel any form or lie or see one, and when she asked to join you, she was telling the truth, said Owl. Thank you, Owl, you're dismissed, said Tobirama. Owl bowed and soon left the room, leaving only 𝗵𝗃 and Tobirama. You passed the test, but you'll still have to be here for a couple days just to be safe, said Tobirama. I understand. And thank you, said 𝗵𝗃. Tobirama just nodded and walked out and left her in her cell to think. I'm finally free from those freaks, and soon I'll be stopping the real monsters of this world with my new boss, thought 𝗵𝗃. Plus, he's not that bad looking either. Tobirama was watching his Anbu decorate the base for Christmas. A week before Christmas they asked him if they were allowed, and after some long talks he relented and allowed them as long as they clean up. As Tobirama continued to watch, he saw someone sit next to him and saw that it was 𝗵𝗃. Hello Tobirama-sama, are you enjoying Christmas? Asked 𝗧𝗃. And, Lady 𝗵𝗃's real name is 𝗧𝗃 𝗧𝗵𝗲. I've never been one for festivities, but I do enjoy watching everyone have fun and not worry about conflict or death, said Tobirama. I agree, but it does good on the morale of everyone, said 𝗧𝗃. Very true, said Tobirama. 𝗵𝗃, said a Anbu walking up to him, we'd like you to have the honors of putting the star on the tree. Tobirama sighed and walked over to the tree and reached up and placed it on the tree. After he did that, a Anbu in the back plugged it in and it lit up along with the other lights. Let's have some fun, yelled a dolphin-masked Anbu. Soon all the Anbu were all partying and eating. Tobirama smiled a bit and joined everyone in eating the food. 𝗧𝗃 looked at Tobirama and smiled a bit and fiddled with the present she got him. So when are you going to give him your present, 𝗬𝗏𝗧𝗏? Asked 𝗬𝗏, getting a glare from her. I'm not 𝗬𝗏𝗧𝗏, said 𝗧𝗃 as she turned away from him with a pout and small blush of embarrassment. You are one if you like it or not, said 𝗬𝗏, just go and give it to him. I got a deal with Nico, who found the sake stash again. She looked down at her gift for him and fiddled with her fingers for a moment before she stood up and walked over to Tobirama. Yes, I agree, we should invest in a bigger barracks for more soldiers and a bigger training area, said Tobirama, taking a sip of tea. Tobirama, said 𝗧𝗃 standing behind him. What is it? Asked Tobirama, turning around and looking at her. Merry Christmas, said 𝗧𝗃 with a small blush and looked away. Tobirama looked at the box and took it before he slowly unwrapped it and opened it. When he did, he was shocked at what he saw. It was a headband like his old one in his previous life. It even had the hidden leaf symbol on it. Thank you, 𝗧𝗃. I truly appreciate this, said Tobirama. Oh well, I'm glad you like it, said 𝗧𝗃 as she played with her hair and put it behind her ear. For as smart as you are, you're more dense than a black hole when it comes to love, thought all the Anbu watching this. Tobirama reached into his pocket and pulled out a book about a hero and a villain that fell in love. Here, I thought that you may like this, said Tobirama, handing her it. She took the book and smiled because it was a book that she's been wanting to read for a while now but never had the chance to get it. Thank you, Tobirama, said 𝗧𝗃, bowing slightly. All right, now let's open up the slow dance, yelled a Anbu who still had his gear but got rid of his mask. Soon a bunch of the couples that formed in the Anbu went to the dance floor, their partner, and started to dance to the slow music. Tobirama stood in the back and watched everyone start to dance and couldn't help but think back to his old life, when his brother had the whole village celebrate a holiday similar to this. 𝗬𝗏 could only smack his head at what he was seeing. His commander was too dense to notice and 𝗧𝗃 was too embarrassed to ask him for a dance. That's it, said 𝗬𝗏 as he walked over to Tobirama. What is it, 𝗬𝗏? Why don't you go and dance? Asked 𝗬𝗏. I've never been one for dancing, said Tobirama. That may be true, but I don't see anything wrong with it. Why not ask 𝗧𝗵𝗃 to dance? I'm sure she'd like to, said 𝗬𝗵𝗃. Tobirama was silent for a moment before he walked over towards her. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 looked around a little sad that Tobirama didn't want to dance and also slightly embarrassed because Nico decided to get her a Santa outfit that emphasized her curves. 𝗧𝗵𝗃, would you like to dance with me? Asked Tobirama, shocking her. Said 𝗧𝗵𝗃, embarrassed since she's never been asked to do this. I'd like that. Tobirama gently took her hand and led her to the middle of the room that was being used as a dance floor. He placed his left hand on her hip and with his other he held hers, while she placed one hand on his shoulder. They both slowly began dancing to the music, and as they were lost in each other's eyes, with Tobirama looking deep into her purple eyes, while 𝗧𝗵𝗃 looked up into his red eyes. As they continued dancing, they quickly lost track of time and didn't realize they danced through 5 whole songs. When the last song finally ended, both of stopped and were still lost in each other's eyes before both of them noticed something hanging above them. It was a mistletoe and it was hanging right above them. You know what a mistletoe stands for? Asked 𝗧𝗵𝗃, looking down to hide her blush. If I remember correctly, if you're under it you have to kiss the other person, correct? Asked Tobirama, looking down at her. She shyly nodded her head. Tobirama gently let go of her hand and cupped her chin and slowly lifted it up. They both stared at each other one last time before they slowly closed their eyes and leaned in to kiss. After a couple seconds they slowly separated from the kiss and looked at each other again. I wouldn't mind another one if you don't, said 𝗧𝗵𝗃. Tobirama gave her a small smile and kissed her again, which she happily returned and wrapped her arms around his neck, while he wrapped his around her waist with neither wanting to let go. 2 months later, Tobirama was standing in the center of a room and had both his hands tied behind his back while also having a blind fold over his eyes. He was relying on his chakra sensing and hearing to locate the enemies and dodge any incoming attacks, and as he continued to listen he heard footsteps. Anbu with wearing a blank mask because he was still in training and will get his animal one once he graduates, charged at Tobirama. Tobirama heard his footsteps and at the last second, he ducked under a slash from a kunai and kneed him in the chest, which knocked the wind out of him. Before he could recover, Tobirama kicked him in the head, which sent him across the room and slammed into the wall. He listened and heard what sounded like 3 other figures coming at him and responded in kind. The first Anbu jumped and tried to slash him with his sword, which Tobirama caught with his teeth and kicked him in the knee, breaking the bone before he jumped and kicked him in the head. He heard someone doing hand signs and spit the sword out of his mouth and kicked it towards the Anbu, who had to stop doing hand signs and dodge. After the Anbu dodged, he saw Tobirama take a deep breath of air and shot out thousands of small water needles from his mouth. Sadly, he wasn't able to dodge them and got all shot up. Tobirama turned to the final Anbu and could sense fear emanating from him, and he capitalized on his fear. Before the Anbu could react, Tobirama body flickered behind him and kicked him in the neck, knocking him out. He then undid his hands from the restraints and took off his blindfold and saw all the other Anbu in the room looking at him in shock. If all of you continuously train and improve your skills, you may one day be able to do something like I just did, said Tobirama. All the Anbu nodded and separated, heading in different directions to do what they were assigned or do whatever in their free time. Tobirama grabbed a towel and wiped some of the sweat off his body and didn't notice the looks of just from some of the female Anbu. 𝗬𝗵𝗃, he's really hot, said one Anbu member with long orange hair. I know, right? Do you think he's single? Said another one. Who cares, I'm gonna ask him out, said another. A couple feet away was 𝗧𝗵𝗃, who gripped her closed can of soda so hard it started to crack and soda started to shoot out. Her face contorted into anger and jealousy from hearing that. You're at 𝗧𝗏, you know that, said 𝗬𝗵𝗃, waiting for her to move so he can grab a drink. What, no I'm not, yelled 𝗧𝗵𝗃, looking angry and flustered. You like him, don't you? Said 𝗬𝗏𝗃, grabbing a can of beer. What? No, who could ever like that bigotry, said 𝗧𝗵𝗃, who turned away and humphed him. 𝗬𝗏𝗃 just gave her a blank stare. She's definitely at 𝗧𝗏. He then took a sip of beer. Well, I guess it doesn't matter that those girls are flirting with him then. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 looked over and saw those 3 Anbu girls were currently talking to him, and she felt a wave of jealousy wash over her. But unsure what to do because she's never been able to open her heart to anyone. She decided to throw logic out the window and walked over to Tobirama, not seeing that 𝗬𝗲𝗏 was chuckling. "I'll try and find a day to help you with your kunai throwing skills," said Tobirama, looking at one of the female Anbu before him. "Tobirama-sama," said Kana, walking up to him, "I was wondering if you'd like to go on a recon mission with me." She turned her head away to hide her blush. "I don't see why not. Let me get dressed and I'll meet you at the entrance," said Tobirama as he walked away. Kana looked at the other girls and gave them a smirk while glaring at them. In Tokyo, two figures could be seen running across rooftops looking for any trouble or something suspicious. The one in the lead was Tobirama, who was wearing his blue battle armor but had a dragon mask on to hide his identity. So his parents aren't hunted down by heroes or villains. Behind him is Lady Nagant, who was wearing a Anbu uniform and had a cobra mask on. As they continued running, Tobirama saw something and both him and Kana dodged a massive blast of flames. Both of them looked up and saw 𝗫𝗏𝗏 land on the roof with them and had about 20 sidekicks around him. "So are the person they call Hokage and leads that massive vigilante group?" asked 𝗫𝗏𝗏. "And what if I am?" said Tobirama. "He. Now surrender, we have you surrounded and there's no way to escape," said 𝗫𝗏𝗏. "No, and in reality you're the one surrounded," said Tobirama. 𝗫𝗏𝗏 looked confused before he looked up and saw 12 Anbus surrounding him and his sidekicks. "That doesn't matter, you're all going to prison," said 𝗫𝗏𝗏. "The leader is mine. The rest of you deal with his lackeys." 𝗫𝗏𝗏's sidekicks nodded as they watched him charge at the leader of the group. Tobirama dodged his punch and slammed his elbow into 𝗫𝗏𝗏's armpit, which almost broke the bone with a single strike. He grunted in pain from the strike, and before he could react, Tobirama created a water WHP with a single hand sign and had it wrap around him. Tobirama then flung him across the roof and into a nearby building where he quickly jumped in after him. "Damn it," said 𝗫𝗏𝗏 before he looked up at the masked figure coming at him. "Flash fire jet burn!" yelled 𝗫𝗏𝗏 as a massive wave of flames went towards Tobirama. Water style. Water Dragon Jutsu. Tobirama created a massive water dragon out of thin air and it charged and tore through 𝗫𝗏𝗏's flames. 𝗫𝗏𝗏 was hit by the massive water dragon and flew through the entire building and landed painfully on the ground below. "What the F? I'm the number 2, there's no way I should be losing like this," yelled 𝗫𝗏𝗏, enraged that he was getting his butt kicked. "Just because you have a title doesn't mean you're that strong. Anyone could beat you if they train hard enough," said Tobirama, body flickering in front of him. Yelled 𝗫𝗏𝗏 as he charged at Tobirama while igniting his fists in flames to burn him. Tobirama kept dodging all his attacks and pulled out a kunai and kept cutting him in areas with lots of nerves or where you to bleed out very fast. 𝗫𝗏𝗏 kept trying to hit him, but no matter how hard he tried he just couldn't, and it was pissing him off. Flash for 𝗫𝗏𝗏 was cut off when Tobirama cut his face and blinded him in his left eye. Earth style. Stone pillar, said Tobirama as a pillar of earth shot out of the ground and slammed into 𝗫𝗏𝗏's chin, breaking the jaw. Water style. Swirling vortex, said Tobirama as he created a massive whirlpool of water that was spinning 𝗫𝗏𝗏 around in it. As 𝗫𝗏𝗏 continued to be spun, he saw something in the water and saw that it was the man he was fighting, and he had pieces of paper. Tobirama threw a bunch of explosive tags at 𝗫𝗏𝗏 and detonated them, hurting him even more as he slammed into the ground. 𝗫𝗏𝗏 was a broken mess, with all his ribs being broken and bones in the rest of his body, and him losing 1/4 of his BLD. "I should kill you for all that you've done, but I'll leave that up to him," said Tobirama as he walked away. 𝗫𝗏𝗏 grunted in pain and slowly lifted his head and saw Anbu with a tiger mask in front of him and had blue flames in his hands. 𝗬𝗏𝗏 slowly started to walk towards his father and stood in front of him. He then kicked 𝗫𝗏𝗏 in the face, knocking a tooth out. "I'm gonna enjoy this," said 𝗬𝗏𝗏 with a grin under his mask. All that could be heard from where he was 𝗫𝗏𝗏's screams of pain. Nagant rolled out of the way and shot her gun at a hero about to attack her, and the bullet went right through his lower abdomen. She looked up and saw all the other heroes were unconscious and were worse for wear. "Good job, everyone. Let's start heading back home before more heroes show up," said Tobirama, appearing before them. "Hi, Hokage-sama," yelled all the Anbu, getting ready to leave. They all started to leave, with 𝗬𝗏𝗏 quickly catching up, and they left no trail back home. Damn it. yelled 𝗧𝗏𝗏 as he slammed his fist on the table, the number 2 hero defeated by a single vigilante. And not only that but injured to the point he might have to retire. He was sitting in his office with All Might in his muscle form and Aizawa in front of him. This is very troubling. People are starting to ask who this group is and just how strong they are, said All Might rubbing his chin. Agree, and not only that but I still haven't found a single trail of evidence. It's like they just appear and disappear, said Aizawa. All Might because Endeavor was taking out you might be asked to deal with them since no one else can if the leader can beat the number 2, said 𝗧𝗏𝗏. All Might nodded and left. I'll ask Nezu to see if he can allow me to bring some of the staff to help, said Aizawa as he left. No one noticed that in the room was a tiny microphone that was recording this whole talk and informing the Anbu of the police and heroes plan. Tobirama was looking over some files on the Hero Association that some of his Anbu were able to get. Tobirama flipped a page and saw that the Hero Association has been capturing children with potential quirks to help them gain power or to use as assassins. Hokage-sama, said Dabi walking over to him, what are we going to do about this? We'll raid the place and try and take out some of the leaders of it and rescue anyone that was kidnapped, said Tobirama. How many Anbu should we bring? Asked Dabi. All of them, said Tobirama standing up and heading to his room to get his armor. Assemble them all. Hi Hokage-sama, said Dabi saluting and quickly leaving the room. Tobirama stood in front of all his ninja looking down at them while wearing his battle armor. Anbu. Tonight we attack the Hero Association and shall reveal to world its corruption and we shall clean it and fix this world. We will not allow corrupt government officials and heroes that abuse their power to rule over the people anymore. Not only that we shall also crack down on villains and hit them harder and many other scum, said Tobirama. The world shall know of us but we shall still live in the shadows to protect them. We are not meant for the light, we are meant to protect the light from the darkness of humanity. We of Anbu shall help this world and save it from its own darkness it has plunged itself into too. All the Anbu stood silent but were all moved by his speech and they all knew this is why Anbu was created. All the soldiers stood at attention and placed a fist over their hearts while all simultaneously shouting. We are with you till the end Hokage-sama. Tobirama nodded his head, very well then assemble into your teams and get all the gear you need. Tonight we attack the Hero Association. The Anbu quickly ran off grabbing all the supplies they would need for this massive raid. Tobirama, said Kano walking up to him, I mean no disrespect but are you sure this is a good idea? The Hero Association is very powerful. Plus if your identity gets out your family will be in danger. Don't worry, I already took care of my family, they are currently in America for a very long vacation. Also it won't matter if my identity gets leaked, they won't be able to do anything, said Tobirama. If you say so Tobirama, said Kano before she left to grab the rest of her gear. Tobirama then looked at the blueprints of the Hero Association HQ and narrowed his eyes. I will never allow people let alone children to be used as soldiers. Never again. A massive skyscraper which had the Hero Association emblem of an imperial eagle. In front of the building were a couple of heroes and ancients that worked only for the Hero Association. This is so boring. At least the pay is good, said a hero. Oh shut up, we pay you to guard not talk, said one of the guards. Yeah, who's that? Said the hero pointing to a man with a tiger mask and was wearing what seemed to be ninja gear. Halt, said one of the agents. Dabi smirked under his mask and he charged forward at Anbu level speeds and before they could react he killed them all with his wakizashi. Sorry but I don't deal with corrupt scum, said Dabi looking at the front entrance. He lifted his hand and blasted a massive fireball from it and destroyed the entrance, alerting the entire building. Anbu, take them, yelled Dabi as 7 squads of Anbu jumped down and charged into the building, cutting down any heroes that had the kill on sight order and knocking out the other heroes that didn't have that order. High above the skyscraper on a cloud that was created from a quirk of one of his Anbu was Tobirama and 4 squads. You all know your orders, he said before he jumped down and landed on the ground and looking at the couple of agents. The agent didn't even get to finish his sentence as a bullet blew his head off and another round killed the other agents. Good shot, 𝗂𝗧𝗍, said Tobirama over his earpiece, walking to the door with his Anbu landing down and securing the area for him. I aim to impress, said Kana half a mile away with a smirk on her face. You only aim to impress him, 𝗧𝗏, said Dobby over a private channel. Shut up, Dobby, or next shot I take will take off what makes you a man, said Kana, blushing in embarrassment. Whatever you say, 𝗧𝗏, said Dobby, shooting a massive fireball at some agents. 2 minutes before the raid in the president of the Hero Association office, he was on a call with 𝗏𝗧𝗏. Do you have the bullets I requested, 𝗏𝗏𝗏? Said the president. We only have a couple because the person we take them from is being difficult, said 𝗏𝗏𝗏. I don't care what you have to do nor kill, just give me those bullets like you promised, 𝗏𝗏𝗏. I'm not hiding your crimes and paying you just for SHTS and giggles, she said as she leaned back in her chair. Very well, I'll ramp up the experiments to get them out sooner, said 𝗏𝗏𝗏 before he ended the call. Finally. After I get those and whatever it is that makes the bullets, we'll be able to run things the way it should be, she muttered. Boom. She felt the building shake a little and looked around, shocked. What the F is going on? She yelled into phone she grabbed. We're being attacked. They are masked emblettes. The line went silent after the sound of metal hitting flesh. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏, the president yelled as she grabbed a remote control from her desk, but before she could press it her hand was blown off from a bullet. Miss Pre- yelled the agent entering the room, but his head was blown off by a bullet. What the F is going on? She yelled as she took cover under her desk. She grabbed her cell phone and looked through the security cameras of the building and saw masked ninja running through the building, killing or knocking out everyone in their path, and then she saw one that stood out from the others. He had white hair and blue armor and was heading towards her office, and he had 4 of those ninjas guarding him as he walked. Damn it, she said as she tried to call the server room and order them to destroy any evidence of the crimes they committed. But the line was dead and she was starting to feel fear. She looked back at the camera and saw 7 heroes running towards that man, but in the blink of the eye he was behind them, holding a kunai, and all of them fell down with their throats slitted. Tobirama took one final turn and saw a door at the end of the hall that had the president of the Hero Association's tag on it. Make sure no one interrupts me while I get the information I came for, said Tobirama, making his Anbu nod. He walked up to the door and kicked it open before he slammed the door shut and sensed the woman under the desk. Tobirama walked over to the desk and threw across the room like it was nothing, but saw she was holding a gun. 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗧, she yelled as she pulled the trigger. Tobirama used some water chakra in his hand and grabbed the bullet mid-air and dropped it. Before she could even react, Tobirama grabbed her by the throat and slammed her into the wall behind her. You're going to tell me everything I want to know or you'll wish you were never born, said Tobirama, applying more pressure. FFY, she gasped. Thought so. He then reached down and grabbed her finger and snapped it, making her scream. For left to go, said Tobirama emotionlessly as he grabbed another and snapped that one as well. This continued until all her fingers on her only hand were broken, and then snapped her wrist, making her scream even more. Talk or you'll know what 50,000 volts of electricity feels like going through your body, said Tobirama as he encased his hand in lightning chakra and was holding a 𝗧𝗵𝗲 to push into a major nerve bundle. Do your 𝗧𝗏𝗧𝗏𝗧 villain, she said. Very well, said Tobirama as he slammed the 𝗧𝗵𝗲 into the nerve bundle on her chest, making her scream in pain. This continued for a couple more seconds before she died from the shock. I guess I have to do it again, said Tobirama, revealing it was a genjutsu and she was still being held up by the throat and still had broken fingers. I can do this as long as you want, and I can make it even more painful if you want. He pulled out his katana and put it to her stomach. She had tears streaming down her face, but she still glared. You'll have to kill me F-. She didn't get to finish the sentence as the sword went through her stomach and up and out the back of her neck. The president closed her eyes before they snapped open again and saw that none of that happened, but she felt it all. Shall I continue? Said Tobirama, holding a kunai over her eye. I'll talk. Please stop, said the president. Very well, said Tobirama, throwing her to the ground and then throwing a kunai through her hand to keep her pinned. Start talking, he said as he slammed his foot on her stomach, making her puke. Dobby entered a massive celled area where hundreds of cells were holding lots of different people, and most being children they are brainwashing. He couldn't help but be sickened at this but continued to the archives where he was taught to go as the rest of his squad took care of all the prisoners and releasing them from this hell. Soon he reached a massive reinforced door and he couldn't help but chuckle found it. Dabi walked over to the door and placed his hands on the door and started to melt the metal with his flames. After 5 long minutes he was in the archive room, which luckily was all saved on servers, and he'd only need a USB to get all the information. He plugged the USB in and started to transfer all the data onto it and couldn't help but chuckle. I wonder what the response will be once we release all these dark deeds to the whole world. Tobirama stood up and looked at the president's broken form, which he actually tortured after he found out she allowed human experimentation on innocent people and worse, children. One stood out to him though. It was a little white-haired girl with a bronze horn and red eyes, and she was under the care of 𝗲𝗏, who has been performing experiments on her that would be labeled crimes against humanity. Okay-sama, all tasks have been completed, said a duck masked Anbu. Very well, let's retreat now, said Tobirama as he body flickered away. All the Anbu quickly left as well, but not before they left a mark for the whole world to see. It was the mark of Anbu burning in blue flames on the side of the building to tell the whole world who did this. Hello everyone. In recent news, the Hero Association HQ was attacked by the vigilante group that have named themselves Anbu. The Hero Association president and over 300 members including heroes have been killed in the attack, said the reporter looking shocked. Thank you Yui. Now we sh said another reporter before the broadcast was changed and had the symbol of Anbu on the TV. The TV changed and it showed Tobirama sitting in a chair wearing his battle armor, and he had 2 Anbu standing behind him. Hello everyone, as I'm sure you heard and saw that the Hero Association HQ was attacked last night, and I just want to say that I was the one that attacked it. Me and my followers attacked the building to show them that there are people out there that won't stand for them anymore. We attacked and killed many members of it and heroes, but the people we did kill were evil, corrupt people. They were more than well aware of what the Hero Association was doing but said nothing to get a paycheck. Not only that, but we saved hundreds of innocent people that were held against their will that the association was performing experiments on. These people are now under our care and protection, and we are treating their wounds. But I understand why they would hide it. What would people think if they knew the very people that protect them are committing horrible crimes? I'll tell you what would happen. There would be massive riots and people would never trust the government and try and fix the system. But no matter how hard you try and fix it or how many times you replace it, eventually it'll fall to evil and corruption. Human greed and lust for power consumes everyone in power, and it's only a matter of time before they become the very thing they say they won't. That is why we exist. We are the shadows that shall keep the darkness away, and we shall be the ones that stop people like that from running the world and controlling people like pawns on a chessboard. I ask you, people of Japan and people of the world, to join us on this crusade of helping to fix this world and to help prevent evil like this from ruling over us. We shall also fight villains and prevent them from ever coming to the light of this world, and shall keep them in the darkness that they belong in. Or we shall eradicate them to prevent them from ever hurting you people, said Tobirama, who reached down and pulled out a USB. This USB holds all the crimes and evil the Hero Association committed or allowed to go on so they can remain in power. They put fear in you and promised to fix this problem but didn't deliver, because if they did, then they'll lose all their power of you. That is all I have to say, but it is up to you if you will stand with us or not, and in 1 hour from now all the information that I have shall be released for the whole world to see. The camera facing Tobirama cut, and he stood up and walked away. Tobirama-sama, are you sure that was a good idea, revealing your face for the whole world to see? Said 𝗧𝗵𝗃 following him. Yes. If I didn't, then the people wouldn't follow me as easily, said Tobirama. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 just nodded her head and continued to follow him. Okay-sama, I found something I believe you'll want to see, said a dog masked Anbu. Tobirama nodded and followed him into the evidence room and saw 2 old beat-up scrolls. One had a kanji for wolf and the other had the kanji for serpent. Bear found these in the Hero Association storage room and believed you may want to see them, said Dog. Tobirama walked to the scrolls, already knowing what they are. They are summoning scrolls, and he was quite shocked that some still existed. Thank you, said Tobirama, grabbing them. I shall open them in a more secure room and no one follow me because I don't know how they'll react. He then walked down the hall till he entered a room still under construction. The room will be a new barracks for any new recruits. Tobirama sat down on the ground, and once the door was closed, he opened both scrolls and saw that they were both blank. He pulled out a kunai and cut his thumb and wrote his name on both scrolls, then cut his other and went through some hand seals. Summoning jutsu, said Tobirama, as two sealing matrices formed on the ground, but nothing happened, making his eyes narrow. But before he could think, he felt a pull, then he disappeared on a cloud of smoke, scaring his Anbu. Tobirama/Hokage-sama, yelled Kana and some of the other Anbu watching from outside the room through the window. Quickly start searching, we have to find him, said Kana desperately. Hi, yelled the other Anbu as they ran off to inform all the other agents that the Hokage is missing and they'll have to search for him. Tobirama, where are you? Thought Kana as she started to run through the bunker. Tobirama opened his eyes and saw he was in a massive forest with trees the same height as some skyscrapers. He looked out and saw massive fields of grass with massive rivers, and further out he saw massive mountains that snow-capped and broke through the clouds. Who are you, human? Said a very deep voice. He turned around and his eyes widened slightly when he saw a massive serpent that was bigger than some of the mountains. The serpent's body stretched far as the eye could see, and he could see some of it being wrapped around some of the mountains. Its scales were white and it had massive yellow eyes that stared into his very soul. The serpent had some vegetation growing under its chin, looking as if it had a beard. Answer my question before I eat you, spoke the serpent, glaring at him slightly. I am known as Tobirama Midoriya, but my true name is Tobirama Senju, and I signed your contract and the wild contract to summon you. The serpent looked at him as if judging him. Oh, and why would you sign two contracts? Let alone the wolf contract, spoke the serpent. Yes, I'd like to know as well, said another deep voice. Tobirama turned around and saw a massive wolf with midnight black fur and piercing yellow eyes. The wolf was easily over 500 feet tall when standing on all fours. I signed both contracts to have your strength and to have powerful allies, said Tobirama. I see. And it's been a long time, 𝗵𝗃, said the serpent. Indeed it has, 𝗵𝗃, said 𝗵𝗃, looking at the serpent. So what will I have to do to show you I'm worthy of summoning both of you and your other summons, said Tobirama. I shall test your strength, said 𝗵𝗃. To prove it, I want you to try and lift me up. Tobirama nodded and walked towards him as he saw the serpent lay down. Tobirama was in front of him and pumped a massive amount of chakra into his body and grabbed the serpent. After a couple of seconds, both 𝗵𝗃 and 𝗵𝗃 were shocked when Tobirama started to lift him off the ground with great effort. Soon Tobirama had his head off the ground, but he was at his limit for how big and heavy the serpent was. Tobirama dropped him and fell to the ground, breathing from exhaustion. You are allowed to summon me and my kind, said 𝗵𝗃 with respect in his voice. He then turned around and slithered away to a massive lake and dove into it, raising the level of the lake. For me you must prove your bravery by sticking your arm in my mouth, said 𝗵𝗃 as he laid down and opened his mouth. Tobirama slowly stood up and walked over to him, and he stuck his arm in his mouth, understanding that he could easily bite it off. 5 days later Tobirama never budged except to eat or drink water, which he had seals for to hold them. He also had special seals for bathroom use, so he didn't have to worry about that either. 𝗵𝗃 was surprised on the human and decided to truly test it and slammed his mouth shut. But he was shocked when Tobirama didn't move an inch and only stopped an inch away from biting his arm off. You pass my test, said 𝗵𝗃, standing up and looking at Tobirama. You as well can summon me and my kin. Tobirama nodded and he sent back to his world, now the summoner of wolves and serpents. Tobirama arrived at his base and opened his eyes and started to walk through the base and arrived at the meeting hall. He saw lots of his Anbu were talking in groups in panic and figured they were desperately looking for him. Calm down, I am fine, said Tobirama, shocking all the Anbu, who whipped their necks to look at him. He was about to say something when he felt someone hug him. Kana, said Tobirama, looking down at her since she had her face buried in his chest and seemed to be crying. Please don't do that again, said Kana. I was so worried I lost you. Tobirama nodded sadly and gently rubbed her back. Don't worry, I won't be leaving anytime soon. Kana nodded her head before she realized that she was hugging him in front of all her comrades. She quickly whipped her head back and saw them, and they all had eating grins. Kana felt 𝗵𝗃𝗍 rushing to her face and quickly ran off to her room to hide from her embarrassment. Tobirama just looked at her confused, still unaware she had feelings for him, making his Anbu smack their foreheads because of his denseness. Hour after made his statement to the whole world, the Anbu released all the information they collected from the Hero Association. After the news was let out, riots started to take place and people were panicking and mobs started to form, siding with the Anbu and the Hokage. Police and heroes were desperately trying to regain order over Japan, but a massive amount of people weren't listening to them. In some areas, entire towns overthrew the government and swore allegiance to the Hokage. Anbu have become even bigger and can sometimes be seen running around from rooftops protecting people from the shadows. Some people have even been demanding that the Anbu be part of the government to help make sure no one gets too powerful. Or to make sure something like what the Hero Association has been doing never happens again. The whole world watched in shock at what the Hero Association in Japan did to its people, and lots of countries started to look into their hero associations in their own country to see if they did things similar to this. There were even whispers from some countries about inviting Anbu to their own country and to help crack down on corruption and villains. 3 weeks later, Tobirama was sitting in his office doing some paperwork on expanding his base and making 2 new bases in Japan. One in Kyushu and the other in Hokkaido. 𝗬𝗂𝗧𝗵𝗲, said a Anbu kneeling down in front of him, "We have been looking into the Yakuza like you've ordered." "Proceed with the reports," said Tobirama, putting his paperwork down to look at the Anbu. It appears the Hero Association has been funding them and helping cover up their crimes in exchange for quirk erasing bullets. They were planning to use them on any heroes that went out of line and to keep them in control. From the information line required from the Hero Association servers, they were planning to use them on the top 10 and replace them with their own heroes that are only loyal to them. The quirk erasing bullets, from what we heard, are extracted from someone unwillingly, and apparently the leader, named 𝗬𝗏𝗍, kills the person to harvest all the BLD and anything else of value, then reconstructs the person back to life. Tobirama leaned back into his chair in thought about this and nodded his head in understanding. "Have Team Wolf and Viper watch the Yakuza and keep me informed on any movements they are making and find all their bases," said Tobirama. "Hi Hokage," said the Anbu, before he body flickered away. "The League of Villains, Yakuza, and Meta Liberation Army. They are my 3 biggest threats as of now, along with any corrupt heroes and government officials out in the world," thought Tobirama. Tobirama stood up and left the room to go and get some food from the cafeteria, and as he walked he looked around his base. It was even bigger than before, almost twice its original size, and had even Anbu and Anbu in training running around. "𝗬𝗏𝗧𝗏," said some of the Anbu as they bowed to him as he walked past them, nodding to them, showing he heard them. Elsewhere in the city was a squad of Anbu going on patrol when a knife flew at one of them, but the Anbu caught it with ease. "So you're the so-called Anbu," said a figure walking to them. The Anbu looked and saw a muscular man who walks with a distinct hunch and has a flat, somewhat triangular face without a nose. He has rather long, black hair in a messy fashion. It would drape over his face if not for his headband and mask, and small eyes with tiny red irises. He sports a dark combat suit, plated with metal armor across his body to holster his weapons. The torso is sleeveless, so he instead wraps his arms in yellow bandages, all the way from just below his shoulders to his wrists. He also wears long black wristbands and a watch on his left arm, and his knees are protected with metal pads, the costume completed by black boots with steel armor. He wore a BLD red scarf and matching headband, as well as the tattered cloth he wears around his face as a mask. This man was Stain, the hero killer. "I've come to see if your leader is truly worthy or if he's nothing but a fake hero like all those others out there," said Stain. What he didn't know was that he indirectly insulted their leader. And there's one thing you never do to Anbu, that was insult their Hokage. The 4 Anbu pulled out their wakazashis or kunai and got ready to teach this man a lesson he'd never forget. Tobirama was silently eating his food while watching his new recruits train. One stood out to him the most. It was a 18-year-old man with messy purple hair and purple eyes and looked as if he hasn't slept in a week. This person was named Hitoshi Shinso, and he joined them right before he entered the general studies of UA. He offered to be Tobirama's spy in UA and do his best to get whatever information that might be of value to him. Are you alright, Tobirama? Said 𝗧𝗵𝗃 sitting next to him with a bento box in her hand. Yes, just thinking about something is all, he said as he took another bite of his fish. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 nodded her head and started to eat her own lunch in relative silence. She much enjoyed these moments with him, just sitting in silence, not doing anything of importance. She was about to ask him something when Anbu landed in front of him. Forgive me, Hokage-sama, but I have urgent news. Report, said Tobirama. It appears the USJ is under attack and they are completely cut off with no signs of being able to escape, said the Anbu. Prepare 4 squads, I'm going there to rescue those students, said Tobirama as he stood up and left to get his battle armor. Hi! Yelled the Anbu, disappearing. 𝗧𝗵𝗃 sighed but ran off to get her gear as well to help him out. 𝗳𝗧𝗏 laid on the ground defeated. Most of his bones were broken and he was bleeding profusely. He was barely able to stay conscious from the pain. He looked over and saw that light blue-haired man named Shigaraki charge at his students and activated his quirk, preventing him from killing them. You're pretty cool, erase your head, said Shigaraki, grinning. 𝗵𝗃, kill him. The 𝗵𝗃 was about to crush 𝗳𝗧𝗏's head when a kunai flew past its arm and Tobirama appeared and pumped a massive amount of chakra into his leg and kicked the 𝗵𝗃 away, almost tearing its head off its body from the force of the kick. Anbu, protect the students and take down any villains that get in your way, said Tobirama, glaring at Shigaraki. Figures could be seen dashing off in different directions of the USJ to do as ordered. 𝗳𝗧𝗏, you're safe now, you can rest, said Tobirama. Ox, heal his wounds and any students that were injured. An ox-masked Anbu landed next to 𝗳𝗧𝗏 and gently picked him up before he body flickered to the top of stairs where some of the students were. He placed him down and his hands glowed green and he started to heal his wounds. You're one of those Anbu terrorists that are causing chaos in our country, said a student named Ida. Ox just ignored him and continued to heal 𝗳𝗧𝗏. So you're the one that's been causing so much chaos and changing everything and making it harder for me to get minions to help, said Shigaraki. Tomura, Shigaraki's secret successor to All for One, you have a decay quirk that turns anything to dust when you place all 5 of your fingers down on it, said Tobirama, shocking him. How do you know that? It's quite simple really, since you didn't take into effect that any information stored on computers can be hacked if you're good enough. 𝗵𝗃, kill him. The 𝗵𝗃 charged at Tobirama and tried to punch him, but he simply blocked his attack by raising his arm. My brother and Madara could hit harder than that, thought Tobirama. You're gonna have to try harder. He was answered by the 𝗵𝗃 swinging his arm even faster, but Tobirama dodged it by jumping backwards and doing some hand signs. Water style. Water dragon jutsu, said Tobirama as a massive dragon made of water came from the lake behind him and the students he was guarding. The dragon was easily over 50 feet tall and towered over everyone. It then charged downwards, slamming into the 𝗵𝗃, blowing it back and slamming the 𝗵𝗃 around like a chew toy. The 𝗵𝗃 landed on the ground and all its wounds quickly healed and charged back at him. Earth style. Rock waltz, said Tobirama as he created a wall from the ground and quickly threw some explosive notes on the ground behind it. The 𝗵𝗃 charged right through it and was met by the full explosion and simply shrugged it off. It seems blunt force and concussive force don't do much to it. It must have some type of shock absorption or nullification. In that case, I'll have to try something else, thought Tobirama, dodging some punches from it. All around the USJ, the students were being picked up by the Anbu and taken to the top of the stairs where they saw one healing their teacher. They then looked down at the bottom and saw the Hokage fighting the 𝗵𝗃 and easily holding his grown to him. One student, however, was said because he recognized who he was because of his video he posted. Stupid thing, Deku, said Katsuki, seething in rage at the fact that Izuku was trying to show off in front of him. Baku bro, who are you talking about? Whispered Kirishima. That DMN thing Deku down there fighting that freak, said Katsuki. He thinks he can be a hero when he's nothing more than a terrorist. Tobirama jumped away from the 𝗵𝗃, analyzing how it fought and healed, and noticed that it was slowly getting weaker after each chakra-enhanced punch, and he realized the 𝗵𝗃 had shock absorption. Alright 𝗵𝗃, it's time I ended this, said Tobirama, jumping back and flaring his chakra. The entire USJ shook and cracked when he flared his chakra and started to go through over 50 hand signs as he did it. Water style. Water Hydra Jutsu, said Tobirama. The air became dry and all grass and plant life withered away as all the water in them was pulled out. The water in the lake started to toss and turn and lowered 2 whole inches as behind him all the water collected. Together, it all combined and made a massive 9-headed hydra with some of its heads reaching the top of the dome. All the surviving villains in the USJ saw this, and some fell on the ground while others bowed their heads to the ground begging for forgiveness. The students were in complete shock and awe from this right here, and just by looking at it and how unfazed Tobirama looked, could tell he was still holding back and could have easily made it even stronger. The Anbu looked at their Hokage in awe and reverence, and Kano was in the same boat but was kinda turned on from seeing him do this. The Nomu, who was designed to never feel fear and take on anything without batting an eye, felt something that it didn't know. It felt fear. The Nomu started to slowly back away, looking at this massive creature Tobirama made. Before it could even react, one of the Hydra's head shot forward and grabbed onto it and bit it in half. 2 more heads came by and grabbed each part, and soon all the heads started to slam into one another, tearing the Nomu apart until the water in all the Hydra's heads were BLD red and nothing was left of the Nomu to even regenerate. "Surrender now or you'll be next," said Tobirama as flared his chakra slightly and the water Hydra turned and glared at Shigaraki. Before any of them could react, Kurogiri quickly made a portal allowing them to both escape. Tobirama sighed and berated himself for not killing him and sent all the water back to the lake and looked up at 1A before he turned towards the villains. "We surrender," yelled all the villains that were standing up, and they all threw their hands up. He gave them a simple glare and walked up the stairs towards 1A. After a short walk he arrived in front of them and the teacher of the class, who now looked much better and only had minor wounds. "Thank you for saving us," said Izuku looking at Tobirama. "DKU!" screamed Katsuki seeing him. He then charged at him with explosions in his hands and was right in front of him and tried to attack, when a female Anbu with a cobra mask appeared in front of him and slammed him into the ground while grabbing his arm. She snapped his arm at his elbow and where the arm connects to the shoulder. Katsuki screamed in pain and was about to try and get up when the cobra-masked Anbu activated her quirk and a massive barrel of a gun came out of her elbow and put it right to his head. For the first time in Katsuki's life, he felt true fear enter his system when he saw behind her mask in the eye holes. He saw nothing but cold murder. "Cobra enough," said Tobirama looking at her. "Hi Hokama," said Kana as she stood up and stood next to him. Just then the door of the UFA slammed open and the staff plus All Might and Lemillion were there. They all saw the Anbu, but before they could react they all body flickered away. Stain laid on the ground bloody and beaten with the 4 Anbus standing over him. "They are so strong," thought Stain as he tried to stand up. You must be some of the strongest members in that so-called Anbu." "Oh. We are simply recruits because we don't have animal masks," said one of the Anbu. That shook Stain to his core. "Then how strong is your leader?" she asked. "He's stronger than anyone in this world. He could defeat All Might," said the Anbu. "Impossible," yelled Stain. "All Might can't be defeated." "That's where you are wrong. No matter how strong you think someone is, they can be defeated. If they can bleed, even a god can be killed," said the Anbu. Stain clenched his teeth in anger at that, because no matter what he says, that statement is true regardless. "And how could your so-called leader defeat All Mights?" snarled Stain. "Easily, he only has speed and strength and nothing else," said Tobirama appearing behind him. Stain's eyes snapped wide and he tried around and looked at Tobirama. He looked around and saw over 20 Anbu around the area. The only reason he's able to remain number 1 is because of those 2 things, but if either fail or a villain is strong enough or stronger, then he won't be able to defeat him or her, much like what happened to him 5 years ago, said Tobirama. "What the hell are you talking about?" said Stain. 5 years ago All Might was gravely injured and he is slowly losing his powers, and he's only able to be a hero for 3 hours a day. After that he's a shriveled old man unable to do anything, said Tobirama. "That can't be true," said Stain. "It is, and if you look closely you'll see his time become shorter and shorter and he makes less public appearances," said Tobirama. "Now tell me, why did you attack my Anbu?" "To test them, then find you and see if you're worthy," said Stain. "Ox, heal him," said Tobirama. Ox walked over to Stain and started to heal his wounds, and after a couple minutes all his wounds were healed and he was standing up. "What's stopping me from attacking you?" said 𝗧𝗵𝗲. "My personal Anbu that guard me, but I already told them not to interfere," said Tobirama. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 heard this and grinned as he charged at him, but he didn't even get 3 feet when Tobirama lifted a finger and flared his chakra, which made him slam into the ground and create a massive crater from how potent and powerful it was. The buildings around them groaned and cracked from his chakra's density. All his Anbu had to flare their own chakra to just barely stand up. "I'm still holding back and I could easily flatten your body if I truly flared my strength," said Tobirama. I surrender," groaned again from the crater. Tobirama let up on his chakra and 𝗧𝗵𝗲 started to breath rapidly, trying to get air in his lungs from the pressure he was under. "So tell me, why are you killing heroes, 𝗧𝗵𝗲?" said Tobirama. "I kill fake heroes to make a just society with no fakes, and we only have true heroes like all mights," said 𝗧𝗵𝗲. "That is indeed a noble cause, but some of the heroes you have been killing were innocent, so you were just killing them for no reason," said Tobirama. "Then what about you?" said 𝗧𝗵𝗲. "The ones I killed were true fakes or scum that deserve to die. I looked into them to see what kind of person they were and I'll determine whether or not if they deserve to die," said Tobirama. 𝗧𝗵𝗲 sat on the ground in silence, thinking over what he said. "He's truly powerful," said All Might, watching the recording of the USJ and watching Tobirama take care of the Nomu like it was nothing. "Indeed, and that just makes him even more dangerous for us to deal with," said Vlad King. "So what should we do about him?" "He's changing Japan for the better, but the law still states he's a criminal," said Aizawa. "We should capture him and out him in jail. He's breaking the law regardless of what he's doing," said Hound Dog. "I'd like to meet him," said Nezu, catching everyone's attention. "He fascinates me, so I want to meet him." "But Nezu, he's breaking the law, he's a criminal," said Hound Dog. "He's a vigilante who's trying to fix a broken system, and look at how many people are supporting him. Even some government officials are trying to make his organization be part of the government so they can keep everyone in check," said Nezu. "That was something that has been popping up a lot. Some people in the government are suggesting making the Anbu a separate entity of the government so they won't be connected to them but will keep them in check so the Hero Association incident never happens again." "I'm quite surprised how many people are supporting it," said Aizawa. "It goes to show how much influence he's gained over time. Indeed, it's amazing and terrifying." "At the same time," said All Might. "Precisely, and that's another reason I wish to meet him," said Nezu. In a dark lab, Overhaul just finished performing his experiments on Eri and was leaving to get food when he got a call from a random number. "Who is it?" said Overhaul, wondering who has his number. "Why, hello, Overhaul. How has your work been going as of late?" said All for One. "My, the king of the underworld calling me in, so honored," said Overhaul with suspicion in his voice. "I simply wish to talk, nothing else," said All for One. "What would that be about?" "An alliance of sorts. The vigilante group is causing all of us problems, and this could greatly affect both of us if it continues," said All for One. "Tempting. What would I get out of this little alliance of ours?" "I can provide you with test subjects for your quirk erasing bullets and help increase your funding." "And what exactly would you get out of this?" "I'm sure it isn't out of the kindness of your heart. Your quirk erasing bullets, I want a supply of them." Overhaul was silent and thought the deal through and didn't see a lot of flaws in it. "Very well, I shall agree to this alliance with you under the condition that I be the only one to make the bullets and knows how they are made." "Very well, but I want that supply once your first successful batch is done." Overhaul hung up the phone and saw 𝗵𝗲𝗏 dragging Eri to her room and stopped him. "𝗵𝗲𝗏, bring her back to the lab. I need to get more of her BLD," said Overhaul. He ignored the look of fear that crossed Eri's eyes as she was dragged back and kept trying to fight back. Overhaul was annoyed at this and grabbed her by her hair and dragged her to lab, ignoring her screams of pain. Outside the base was a team of Anbu who have been learning everything about them and knew they'd need to report this to Tobirama. They all quickly body flickered away, heading back to base where they Tobirama leaving the prison area where a new prisoner was. "Hokage-sama," said the Anbu squad as they bowed to him. "Forgive us, but we have very important news." "Very well, what is it?" said Tobirama, crossing his arms. "We've been watching Overhaul like you requested, and we even managed to sneak into the base and steal some information. We gathered info about him performing human experiments on a little girl named Eri. Not only that, but he just agreed to our alliance with the League of Villains." Tobirama was silent, but everyone could tell he was sad. He absolutely hated child abuse, and to find out someone is performing human experiments on a little girl. That just set him off to new levels that would even spook Madara. Gather the Anbu. We're gonna go and kill him, said Tobirama as he walked away while clenching his fists tightly. 𝗏𝗧𝗏 just got done performing another experiment on Eri and reliving some stress, as he liked to call it, when a massive explosion shook the entire facility, startling him. What the hell is going on? He yelled before he pulled out his phone and called his henchmen at the top of the building. What the F is happening? 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗃. The line went dead by the sound of metal slicing flesh. He didn't know why, but he felt fear seeping into his body. It wasn't normal fear, this was pure primal fear. At the top of the base, Tobirama was marching through the halls, slaughtering anyone that got in his way, and he ordered his Anbu to do the same. No monsters will be leaving this building alive, as he put it. He read the reports that his Anbu gave him before he began this raid, and this was one of the few times in his life where he felt pure rage. Not only that, but he couldn't suppress it like he did for most of his emotions. 𝗏𝗧𝗏 performed brutal experiments on a little girl named Eri, and not only that, but he killed her and brought her back to life. Just do repeat the process all over again until he was satisfied. To say Tobirama was sad would be an understatement. Every step he took, the ground cracked and his chakra was flaring so much. The infrastructure of the building was cracking, and some of the weaker villains collapsed from just getting near him. 𝗧𝗏, the villain, didn't even get to finish what he was saying before Tobirama's arm shot out and blew a hole through his chest, leaving a fist-sized hole where his heart used to be. He continued to stomp his way down, and he entered a large room, and all the members of the 8 precepts of death were standing before him. You won't be getting another step further, said 𝗏𝗏, getting ready to fight. Surrender, or I'll make you wish you took your own lives, said Tobirama coldly as he raised his hand and made a single hand sign. His Anbu behind him shivered at that. He's cold, but this. It was on a completely different level. 𝗧𝗏𝗏. He stopped when his body didn't feel right. He felt his arms and legs bending the opposite direction, and before long, a sickening snap was heard, and both of his arms and legs snapped in the opposite direction, and he fell to the ground screaming. 𝗏𝗏, yelled the largest figure before he charged at Tobirama. I'm going to kill you. Water style. BLD dance, said Tobirama coldly, and a second later all the BLD in the body of the man charging at him exploded outwards like spikes, killing him instantly. The other villains looked in horror at the sight and took a step back and felt even more fear when Tobirama started to walk towards them, covered in the BLD of the man he just killed. 𝗏𝗏 was still on the ground groaning in pain when he felt intense pain on his skull and realized that Tobirama was crushing his skull with his foot, and before he could beg for mercy his head exploded from the pressure. Tobirama then continued to walk, and all but one member cowered away from him, and it was Hikiji, and he was regretting that decision. Please don't kill me, he said while shaking and wetting himself from Tobirama's glare that was boring right through his soul. The other members were about to run away when they heard their boss over the intercom. Kill him, all of you, or I'll reduce you to atoms, said 𝗏𝗧𝗏 before the call ended. Hijiki was about to do as ordered, but then he blinked and all the other members were dead, and Tobirama was holding a bloody sword. He was too scared, so he reached into his pocket and pulled out a gun and shot himself in the head. Tobirama didn't even flinch, and he continued walking through the base. My God, said 𝗬𝗏𝗍, feeling uneasy from seeing this. He's never seen someone put this much fear into anyone or become this brutal. Kill the others. 𝗏𝗏𝗏 is mine, said Tobirama as he continued walking and disappearing in the dark hall. 𝗧𝗵𝗃. I think you should talk to him after this, said 𝗬𝗏𝗍. She just nodded her head and followed 𝗬𝗏𝗍 to look for anything of value and kill any remaining members. 𝗧𝗏𝗏𝗏 was running down the hall while dragging a sobbing Eri who was desperately trying to get away from him. She wanted the pain to end and for him to stop touching her in those weird spots, as she thought it. It hurt, and no matter how much she cried and begged, he never stopped. As he continued running, he suddenly stopped when he heard the echo of footsteps and soon saw Tobirama walking towards him soaked in BLD. He had a dead, cold glare on his face, but 𝗏𝗏𝗏 felt fear wash over him to his very core from his gaze. So you're 𝗏𝗏𝗏, said Tobirama. And 𝗧𝗵𝗃 was cut off when a kunai was thrown at him, and he dodged it, but in the blink of the eye Tobirama was behind him holding Eri in his arms. He looked down and saw that his arm was missing. He felt rage and fear course through his veins. "You're okay now, Eri," said Tobirama calmly as he gently rubbed the top of her head. Eri noticed that his touch didn't feel weird like 𝗬𝗏𝗏's did. His touch was warm and comforting. It brought a feeling she never felt before, hope. It brought hope to her. "Who are you?" said Eri, looking at him and noticing something. He has white hair like her and his eyes are almost the same shade as hers. "I am Tobirama and I'm here to save you, Eri," he said while giving her one of his rare true smiles. Wet hot tears streamed down her face and the warm feeling she felt earlier came back, but even stronger than before. She shakily wrapped her arms around him, hugging him, and continued to sob into his chest armor, but these weren't tears of sadness. These were tears of hope. "𝗬𝗏𝗃," said 𝗬𝗏𝗏, reconstructing his arm, "I'm going to kill you and take her back. Please don't make G go back. I don't wanna hurt anymore, or him touch me weirdly," said Eri while sobbing. Tobirama's eyes widened when she said that and realized what she meant by that. 𝗬𝗏𝗏 was a 𝗵𝗃𝗃. He then created a sealess shadow clone. "Go with my clone. I'll be back soon," Tobirama said calmly to her. She nodded her head and gently took the clone's hand, who then picked her up and made sure she was comfy before he ran off, heading to the entrance of the building. "Give her back," screamed 𝗬𝗏𝗏 as he charged forward, but was stopped when Tobirama created a water jet from his mouth that cut his body clean in half, but he quickly reconstructed it and slammed his hand on the ground. Hundreds of spikes shot out at Tobirama, who easily dodged them, and he then went through a bunch of hand seals. "Water style. Water dragon jutsu," said Tobirama as a massive dragon made of water came from thin air and bore through all the spikes and bit into 𝗬𝗏𝗏 and tore through the building before it ran out of chakra. He slowly got off the ground but was met by being kicked in the chest and sent slamming into the ceiling, where he then saw an explosive note on his chest that blew up and made him go through the ceiling. He landed painfully on the ground. "Damn it," groaned 𝗬𝗏𝗏 as he healed his chest but saw Tobirama appear, then sliced off his arm. Tobirama charged at him and proceeded to brutally beat him with chakra-enhanced fists, and each punch broke bones, while also rupturing internal organs, with some exploding from the force of the punches. He grabbed him by the back of the head and slammed it down while kneeing him in the face, shattering his nose. Tobirama then kicked him away and he fell to the ground and turned over on his stomach and started to crawl away but felt Tobirama slam his foot on his back, cracking his spine. "You seem so proud of these arms. Let's see how you act with no arms." Tobirama bent down and grabbed both of his arms by the wrists and pulled back on them, slowly tearing the muscles and tendons along with the skin. Please stop," screamed 𝗬𝗏𝗏. Tobirama ignored him, and after a couple more seconds the sounds of flesh shredding were heard as he ripped off both of 𝗬𝗏𝗏's arms and threw them across the room. "You didn't stop when Eri begged and screamed, so I'm not going to stop with you," said Tobirama as he planted both his feet on his back, then reached down and grabbed his head and started to slowly and painfully pull on it. All 𝗬𝗏𝗏 could feel was unbelievable pain as he felt the muscles, tissues, veins, skin, and arteries along with his spine stretching and breaking. It wasn't long before the skin began tearing along with everything else, and after one last painful tug Tobirama ripped his head off. He then held the head by its hair and looked it in the eyes, still seeing the consciousness in its eyes. "I swear to you, when it's my time to go I will search the deepest and darkest depths of hell to torture for the rest of eternity," said Tobirama. All the Anbu were standing at the top of the building looking at the cowering form of Eri that was hiding behind a desk because Tobirama's clone dispelled, protecting her from falling debris. "My God," said 𝗂𝗃, feeling horrible and feeling her maternal instincts screaming at her to comfort the child. "What did that man do to her?" Just then the door opened and Tobirama came walking clean of any BLD which he used a water jutsu for. Eri saw him and quickly ran to him and hugged him while crying. I thought you disappeared," said Eri. "No, I'm here and you'll never be hurt from him or anyone like him again, I promise," said Tobirama, rubbing the top of her head. "So when you two gonna start making little ninja?" whispered Dabi to 𝗂𝗃. 𝗂𝗃's face exploded red and her mask didn't hide it well. She glared at him with murder and a promise he will pay. Tobirama was sitting in his office 2 days after the raid. He was doing some paperwork and writing some new seals in a scroll. Next to him was 𝗧𝗍, who had her own little chair to sit in and was next to him with her own paper and calligraphy brush. She was trying to attempt to copy what he was doing, but anyone can see it was bad. Tobirama looked at her and had a small smile on his face and gently patted her head. His heart hurt seeing her flinch at first. He knew why she did. Because of this, whenever she had to change her clothes or take a bath, he asked 𝗧𝗍𝗃 to do it so not to scare her. He was a little caught off when she quickly agreed and dragged 𝗧𝗍 off to get her a bath. He didn't realize that to everyone else it seemed like 𝗧𝗍 was his and 𝗧𝗍𝗃's child. His Anbu, of course, all smacked their heads at his denseness, wondering how someone so smart was so dense to sign someone loved him. They were pretty sure she could walk up to him and tell him she loved him and wanted his kids and he wouldn't understand. 𝗧𝗍, would you like me to teach you? Said Tobirama kindly. Why, you would do that for me, said 𝗧𝗍, wide-eyed at the fact someone would do something for her. Yes, and if you want I can begin teaching you a basic education that kids your age know. 𝗧𝗍 nodded her head with her lips twitching upwards. Tobirama closed his scrolls and put them away before he grabbed a blank one and began writing down all the letters. All right 𝗧𝗍, this right here is an A. I want you to try and copy it on your own, said Tobirama. And don't worry if it's messy, it's your first time and there's always time to improve in the future. 𝗧𝗍 then began trying to copy what he wrote down and she even squinted like he did in deep concentration. At his door was 𝗧𝗍𝗃 and 𝗣𝗍𝗍, who were about to give him a report but decided it can wait and closed the door. Wow, he's taking the father role quite quickly, said 𝗣𝗍𝗍. Yes, he has, said 𝗧𝗍𝗃 as she began walking away. Now that I think about it, she does need a mother figure, said 𝗣𝗍𝗍, noticing her freezing. But I'm sure you wouldn't want to do it. I mean, you don't like him, so I can always ask to dash. Hell no, she's my daughter, yelled 𝗧𝗍𝗃 at 𝗣𝗍𝗍, glaring while her quirk activated and she had her gun ready. In that case, it's nice to meet you, Mrs. Midoriya. When's the next little ninja gonna be coming around? Said 𝗣𝗍𝗍. 𝗧𝗍𝗃's face exploded in red as steam started to come from her ears and she quickly stormed off while trying to force her blush down along. With images of her and him getting married and having kids coming to her mind. I'll make sure to poke some holes in your condoms for him, yelled 𝗣𝗍𝗍. Burn in hell. That 𝗧𝗏𝗧 is way too much fun to mess with, said 𝗣𝗍𝗍, chuckling before he walked away. 𝗧𝗍𝗃 continued to stomp off, but her mind was already picturing herself sitting on the porch leaning against his shoulder. With both of them watching the sunset and him rubbing her bloated belly while 𝗧𝗍𝗃 and another little kid were playing. The kid and spiky white and purple hair with red eyes. His face was shaped like his dad, but he had her nose and eyes. Oh my god, said 𝗧𝗍𝗃 as reality finally hit her and her 𝗧𝗏𝗧 self was kicked out for a moment. I'm in love with him. Her red face got even redder and it looked like it was glowing. 𝗳𝗏𝗃 and 𝗵𝗃 were walking through 𝗧𝗏𝗃's base with a look of horror, seeing all the bodies laying on the ground. It looked like they were slaughtered like wild animals. When they arrived where 𝗧𝗏𝗃's personal bodyguard were, they were all dead with varying injuries. It got even worse when they reached the bottom of the base and they found 𝗧𝗏𝗃 himself. His arms were gone and his head was ripped off his body and had laid on the ground facing down as a sign of disrespect. What the hell happened here? Said 𝗧𝗏𝗃. He became curious and worried when the Yakuza suddenly stopped all movement and he decided to investigate, and now he was here wondering who could have slaughtered all of them, let alone 𝗧𝗏𝗃. Sir, I found the security footage, said 𝗵𝗃. Tobirama told his Anbu to leave the security footage be, so when the heroes get here they knew what happened and why. 𝗧𝗏𝗃 and 𝗵𝗃 watched in horror and discussed what happened to 𝗧𝗍𝗃 before the raid, with 𝗵𝗃 puking. He wanted nothing more than to bring him back to life just so he can kill him himself. They continued to watch as the Anbu attacked the base, slaughtering everyone inside and Tobirama being especially brutal to 𝗧𝗏𝗃, and when they did leave they brought 𝗧𝗍𝗃 with them. We need to inform Nezu about this. Here you go 𝗧𝗍𝗃, said Tobirama, handing her an apple. What is it? Said 𝗧𝗍𝗃, looking up at him in confusion. It's an apple, it's really sweet and it tastes really good, said Tobirama. 𝗧𝗍𝗃 took it and took a bite out of it, humming in happiness. It's so sweet, said 𝗧𝗍𝗃 happily. I'm glad you like it 𝗧𝗍𝗃, said Tobirama. Now after this one of my agents will check on you to make sure you're healthy. And don't worry, I'll be right there to make sure nothing bad happens. Promise? Said 𝗧𝗍 as bad memories came back to her. I promise. Both of them plus 𝗧𝗍 were sitting in the medical room and 𝗧𝗍 was holding both of their hands while 𝗧𝗏 used medical ninjutsu to scan 𝗧𝗍 to make sure she was healthy. Well, Hokage-sama, she's decently healthy but will have to be on a strict diet to help her body get all the vitamins it's missing and increase her weight to healthy proportions, as well as some physical therapy to help her muscles grow to the level they should be, said 𝗧𝗏. Thank you, 𝗧𝗏, said Tobirama as he was then handed a couple bottles of medicine. Have her take those twice a day for the next 2 weeks and she should be healthier and be able to slowly wean off the diets, said 𝗧𝗏. Tobirama nodded and they all left the infirmary. So, am I okay, said 𝗧𝗍. Yes, just have to have you take this medicine to help you get your strength back, said Tobirama. 𝗧𝗍 nodded her head and held both of their hands and couldn't help but feel a warm feeling in her chest while doing it. It was the next day late at night and Tobirama was on patrol for the first time since he rescued 𝗧𝗍 and he was enjoying the fresh cold air. As he continued to run across the rooftops, he sensed a powerful person racing to him in extremely fast speeds. Texas Smash, yelled All Might punching him, but he substituted himself with a brick at the nick of time. Tobirama landed on a water tower and looked at the #1 hero. So, you're the vigilante called the Hokage or also known as Tobirama? Sorry, but you have to come with me, said All Might. Tobirama stood up and pulled out a kunai and held it in a reverse grip. You'll have to beat me to do that, said Tobirama. Tobirama and All Might stared at each other with neither moving. Tobirama, you're under arrest now, come quietly or else, said All Might. I think not, I am doing what is right to fix the wrongs of this world. The only reason why you're being ordered to stop me is because I'm an embarrassment. It's because I'm willing to do what no one else is willing to do, said Tobirama. I don't think it's your choice to decide what's wrong or right, and what you're doing is breaking the law, said Best Jeanist appearing across the building. Tobirama looked around and saw that he was surrounded by the top 10 heroes of Japan, including 𝗫𝗏𝗏, who after multiple surgeries managed to come back to the fight. You're coming with us tonight, Tobirama, now surrender or else, said All Might. Tobirama looked around one last time and sensed hundreds of police officers and other heroes around him. He also saw a news helicopter up in the air recording this. He sensed the area one last time and smirked, sensing no civilians in the area. I won't be going anywhere and I guess I can finally stop holding back all this time, said Tobirama as he raised his hand into a seal and flared his chakra. Kai. Across his body, resistance, chakra suppressant, and gravity seals all deactivated, allowing him to use all his strength. During all this time he's only been able to use 50% of his total strength and chakra reserves. And then he flared his chakra and released his Ki. The building under him shattered with thousands of cracks and all the nearby buildings, and the air itself became heavy and thick. All the nearby heroes that weren't All Might, Miruko, and 𝗫𝗏𝗏 felt their knees buckle under the weight of this. Tobirama then lifted one finger and the entire building began to sink and fall apart under his chakra pressure. Let's get wild, screamed Miruko, feeling the most excited she's felt in years. She shot forward and spun her body to kick him as fast as she could, but to Tobirama it was slow motion because of his years of experience. All Might looked and saw Miruko was about to kick him, but Tobirama raised his fist and he could tell that he needed to save her. In the blink of the eye, a massive explosion of air pressure happened and Tobirama was standing where he was but had his fist extended. An entire block away, All Might pried himself out of the wall holding his arm, and he could tell the bone was cracked. Miruko looked up at the building across from her where she just was and felt a tinge of fear enter her body. Tobirama suddenly turned around, ducking under some red feathers and throwing kunai and hawks in retaliation, only for him to barely dodge it. He then saw Edgeshot extend his body into its string form and try to wrap around him. Right hand, said Tobirama, flaring his lighting chakra and electrocuting him. Flash, fire, jet, burn, screamed 𝗫𝗏𝗏, sending a massive blast of flames which Tobirama quickly created a water wall to block. California smash, yelled All Might, appearing before him and punching him in the gut, cracking his armor. Tobirama landed on the ground and slid as he used his chakra to try and get traction, but before he could, 2 shields slammed into either side of him, pinning him to the spot. Detroit smash. yelled Mirio, popping out of the ground and slamming a 70% smash to Tobirama's face. Tobirama went flying into a building and slowly pulled himself out and saw the top 10 plus the new kid. And he spit out a tooth. I normally don't get mad, but now I'm said Tobirama, sending a shiver down all their spines. Before they could even react, Tobirama appeared before Best Jeanist and slammed his fist into him so hard that it created a crater. In the building behind him, back at Anbu HQ, everyone was relaxing or training or spending time with her friends, enjoying the day off they got. 6 plus 6 is 12, said Eri, looking up at Kana. 𝗵𝗃, good job Eri, said Kana, patting her head and smiling. I'm glad I got it right, said Eri. So am I. Now what's the next one, Eri? Said Kana. 7 plus 7, said Eri, trying to figure it out. Use your fingers to count if you need to, said Kana. She nodded her head and did that, and after a couple seconds she got her answer, 14. Good job, Eri, said Kana, kissing her forehead. In no time you'll be as smart as Tobirama. Just then the door slammed open and Dragon ran in. All Anbu agents, the Hokage is under attack from the top 10. After he said that, all the Anbu froze and looked at him wide-eyed before they all ran off to get their gear so they can help their Hokage. Eri, I need you to stay in my room until we get back, said Kana, kneeling before her. What? But I want to help, said Eri. Kana smiled. I'm sorry, sweetie, but you aren't old enough, but maybe one day you can, but please stay here until we come back, okay? Eri looked down but nodded her head in agreement. Kana kissed her forehead. Good, and don't worry, we'll be back before you know it. Eri sat on the ground for a couple minutes before she saw the TV in Kana's room and turned it on, seeing the news. Her eyes watered from what she saw on the TV. Tobirama slowly stood up with his armor being broken and bloody. He looked up at remaining members of the top 10. Before he could do anything, he saw a man with a white suit and green and yellow hair. Sir Knight Eye. I can't let him touch me or the heroes will get an even bigger advantage, thought Tobirama, looking back at the remaining heroes. He defeated Crust, Yoroi Musha, Kamui Woods, Midnight, Present Mike, 𝗵𝗃, Hawks, Ryukyu, Gran Torino, Hound Dog, Eraserhead, Death Arms, 13, Vlad King, Ms. Joke, Mandalay, Pixie Bob, Ragdoll, Burnin, Sun Eater, Nijire-chan, and Gunhead. All Might stood up holding his broken arm and was helping hold Endeavor up. Neither could believe just how strong Tobirama was. All the heroes here had to give their all, and yet they are still losing against him. Tobirama stood up and charged at them, ducking under a kick from Miruko and countering with a punch to her solar plexus. He then quickly turned around and blocked a punch from All Might and countered with a knee to his side. They both entered into a brutal hand-to-hand fight, with neither looking to have an advantage until Tobirama pulled his arm back and a giant blue swirling ball appeared. Giant Rasengan? Said Tobirama, slamming it into his body, sending him away but tagging him with a Hiration just before he left. All Might was flung back, but before he smashed into the building, Tobirama appeared behind him and slammed another Rasengan into his back. All Might fell to the ground and held his wound and was desperately trying to keep his muscle form up. Mirio was stopped mid-sentence when Tobirama appeared in front of him thanks to the Hiration he put on him. Mirio looked shocked when he suddenly couldn't feel his quirks, and then he felt a knee slam into his chin, knocking him on the ground. Tobirama sent a bunch of chakra to his fist and slammed it into his gut, knocking him out. Detroit Smash! Yelled All Might, punching Tobirama in the face and launching him away, where he crashed into a building. He pulled himself out when he saw that Night Eye managed to touch him, and he jumped back and stood next to All Might. Surrender now, Tobirama, you've lost, said Night Eye. You're completely surrounded. Tobirama glared at them but then sensed his no. You're the one surrounded. The heroes that were still conscious looked confused, but then they looked up. All around them were over 300 Anbu glaring at them, and 4 of them stood out from the rest. One had white hair and a lion mask, another had purple hair with pink streaks and wore a cobra mask. Another one had black messy hair and a oni mask but had a red bandana wrapped around his head. The last one wore a dragon mask and you couldn't see any features on him. Anbu, take out these heroes and protect our Hokage, said Dragon as all the Anbu charged forward and attacked the police and heroes. Tobirama stood up and saw that 𝗧𝗵𝗃 landed next to him along with 𝗧𝗃. "Okay, Sama, let me heal your wounds," said 𝗧𝗃 calmly as he began to heal them. "Are you okay?" Tobirama asked 𝗧𝗃. "Just heal the broken bones and any severe bleeding. I need to get back out there so I can fight and defeat 𝗬𝗍𝗏, said Tobirama. 𝗧𝗃 looked down but nodded her head before she quickly turned around and shot a bullet at 𝗳𝗍𝗏 who tried to attack them. "Water dragon jutsu," said Tobirama going through the hand signs, and a giant water dragon formed in the air and slammed into 𝗳𝗍𝗏. Tobirama then stood up and glared at 𝗬𝗍𝗏 who glared back. Both of them charged at each other hoping to finally end this battle once and for all. Tobirama and 𝗬𝗍𝗏 charged at each other and their fist collided creating a massive explosion. "Why are you doing this? You could have become a great hero," said 𝗬𝗍𝗏 trying to break his defense. "Because your system is broken. Tell me what makes it right that villains get more protection than civilians when they use quirks or get injured. I'll tell you they shouldn't. They should be treated as criminals and not civilians that did something bad. But no, your system says you'd be better off being a villain and attacking the city using your quirk than a civilian. Using it in self-defense," said Tobirama. He then jumped back and did a couple of hand signs and created a water gunshot that hit 𝗬𝗍𝗏 in the face, immediately leaving a bruise. Tobirama then kicked him in the gut, sending him away, but 𝗬𝗍𝗏 caught himself and sent a California smash at him, launching him away. He went flying back but dropped lots of paper bombs, and right when 𝗬𝗍𝗏 charged at him, he set them all off, hurting 𝗬𝗍𝗏. 𝗬𝗍𝗏 then stood up while holding his injured arm, and he 𝗧𝗍𝗍𝗏 in his teeth and knew he couldn't hold back anymore against him. Tobirama was about to create another jutsu when he was clotheslined into a building, making the entire building collapse on him. As soon as he dug out of the building, he was picked up and choke slammed into the ground, and 𝗬𝗍𝗏 continued to beat him into the ground, using 100% of his strength for every single punch. Tobirama felt his bones cracking and breaking from every punch and knew he'd have to end this fight or he'll end up in a cell. He spit out a bunch of water needles that distracted 𝗬𝗏𝗏 long enough for him to gather chakra in his fist and punch him away. Tobirama then slammed his palm on the ground and a ceiling matrix appeared and a clone of him sitting in a mediative position appeared. He had a pitch-black tinge around his eyes, much like wolves had. "To summon yourself," said Tobirama, standing up and popping some of his ribs back into place. The clone disappeared and Tobirama felt a massive influx of chakra and the same black markings appeared on his face. "Flying Rajan," said Tobirama as he threw a kunai at 𝗬𝗍𝗏, and in the blink of the eye a white flash appeared. Reincarnation. The Reincarnation slammed into 𝗬𝗏𝗏's gut and injuring him even further and making it harder for him to hold his muscle form. Before he could react, Tobirama appeared and proceeded to punch and kick him, and every time he tried to block, it was just batted away like nothing. "This is where you learn 𝗬𝗏𝗏. You can't defeat me," said Tobirama as he then grabbed his arm and flipped him over. He then slammed his knee on 𝗬𝗏𝗏's elbow, bending it backwards and breaking it. "Oh!" screamed 𝗬𝗏𝗏 who tried to punch him, but that arm was also blocked and put into a leg hold and broke as well. "This isn't a fight. It's a operating table and I'm the surgeon," said Tobirama, who then proceeded to keep punching him. The whole world watched in horror as the #1 hero was losing to the vigilante leader, and no one could believe it. 𝗬𝗏𝗏 couldn't hold his muscle form anymore given the pain, and he shrunk down into his skinny form, but the smoke covered him. "No more lies and no more false hope, 𝗬𝗏𝗏. It's time the world finally realized the truth that you are just a man and not a god," said Tobirama, who then picked him up and threw him out of the smoke for the whole world to see. He slowly stood up and looked around and saw that the fighting stopped and everyone had their eyes on him in shock. "You're a man, 𝗬𝗏𝗏," said a very injured Tobirama, walking out of the smoke towards him. "You're not invincible like everyone thinks you are just a man with a very powerful quirk, and now the whole world sees that." He looked down, hearing Tobirama's words and knowing what he said was true. Now people will finally see him as a human, but he also knew that it will shake people's hope in the hero system. "𝗬𝗏𝗏!" yelled 𝗬𝗏𝗏, landing next to him, and he was still heavily injured as well. 𝗧𝗃 landed next to Tobirama with her rifle ready and a short sword in her other in case he tried anything. "You and the heroes have lost, and it's time you finally realize that you can't stop us and we are not your enemies. We are just like you, heroes to some but villains to others, and our goal is to try and save people in a way that heroes never could. By doing what is necessary to protect people. Some villains can be saved while others can't, and with your system you just say we just throw them in prison for them to easily escape again. The whole world shook at what he said since it held merit and truth. Not only that, but with your system it beats down the weak and upholds the strong, and if anyone doesn't fit your quota they are deemed worthless. Look at quirkless people. They are the perfect example of a people beating down just because they don't have a special ability, and no one cares for them because they don't have any. So tell me, All Might, who is the real villain and who is the real hero in this situation, said Tobirama. I don't know. The answer is simple. There is no hero. We are nothing more than just people trying to do the right thing, but it is labeled as a hero. But people need to understand, to some we are heroes and to others we are villains. There is no right and wrong in the situation, only our morals will determine what is. The rest of his Anbu landed next him, and most of them had injuries but were still in fighting condition if needed. Your system is broken and we will change it for the better, where it will actually help people in need and not the ones who want it. Tobirama and all his Anbu then disappeared in body flickers, leaving the beaten and broken heroes behind. Tobirama and his Anbu appeared back at base, and before he could do anything he slapped across the face by Kana, who had tears in her eyes. What was that for? He asked, looking at her. You're such a baka, she said as she then punched his chest, fighting the top 10 and almost getting yourself killed. She then kept punching him over and over again in the same spot, but they held no strength in them. What if you lost or got killed? Then what would we do? Dragon would take command and lead you while I try and break out. You stupid baka, she said as she glared at him and threw logic out the window and pulled him into a kiss, pouring all of her emotions into it. What about me? I love you, you stupid baka. Tobirama's eyes widened when he heard that, and his mind finally clicked, realizing that all this time she did like him, but he was too stupid to realize. I'll be more careful for now on, said Tobirama. That 𝗧𝗵𝗲 finally confessed, and soon we'll have little ninjas running around here, said Dabi with a 𝗧𝗃𝗧𝗍 grin. Kana's face exploded red as she just remembered that all the other Anbu were behind her and saw the whole incident.